A young girl turns to a guy and asks if he remembers what he promised her, and then he says that he himself doesn't understand. Suddenly, the lady leaves and asks to keep her promise, and the young gentleman screams so that she doesn't leave, because he doesn't want to be left alone. The lady with red hair asks Charlize what happened, and she claims that it looks like she had a nightmare, and that's why she woke her up, and then asks if the girl is all right. However, the main character does not understand why she is crying, and the lady asks what she dreamed about, because now she's sad too. The girl with silver hair explains that she doesn't remember anything, and the lady says that's good, because some dreams are better forgotten. And then he offers to eat cookies and says that she will immediately feel better. Rose says that she bought it especially for the girl and invites her to eat as much as she wants. And at this time, the main character thought that there was no difference about what she dreamed. She hugs the lady and says that Rose is the best. Go. If she is with her, then nothing else matters. The young lady asks Charisse if she remembers what she said to her that time. And does she know what to answer to the emperor? The girl claims that she will serve the emperor faithfully. Hearing this, Rose says that the girl is great because she hasn't forgotten. Charlize asks the lady if she wants to hear her secret, and then he says that Rose is the best in the world. Hearing this, the lady asks if it is true, and he says that this means that she loves her more than anyone in the world. And then he hugs the girl and says that she loves her too. The next day, the maid asks Charlize if she has cleaned the fireplace yet. The girl replies that she was just about to do it. Hearing this, the maid got very angry and said that she had told her many times because she didn't understand what good she was if she was slow to clean up. The little girl says that she knows all this and will do everything now. The maid, smiling, says that she is already 5 years old, but she says she still hasn't learned. And she claims that she should be ashamed of this, because all children her age already know how to do this. The maid looks at the girl and says that she had no doubt that she had no more brains than a chicken. When Charlize was cleaning the fireplace, she thought that this maid had achieved nothing in life, but only knew how to scream. The main character thought that today was Tuesday, and she only had to be patient for a little while. After all, Tuesday and Saturday are the best days. A few hours later, everything in the room was sparkling, and the girl thought that she had no equal in cleaning. And then she wondered if anyone else knew what the future held for them. After all, she was reborn in a book that she had already read and knew everything in advance. The main character knows that in this book she is Charlize, a minor character. The maids gathered around the little girl and did not understand why she was abandoned. After all, they did not know what to do with her. And then the main maid tells them to be silent and invites them not to whine, but rather to get down to business. And she claims that none of this matters because the child belongs to the imperial palace, and therefore they should all take care of her. Charlize was the daughter of a maid, but she abandoned her, and the care of the child fell on the shoulders of the other servants. Since the work was already up to their necks, the maids did not understand where they could get time for the child. And that's why everyone hated Charlize. The maid reports that she still hasn't learned how to do laundry and throws her dirty laundry away. When the girl grew up a little, she became an errand girl, so that they don't hate her even more. Charlize tried to be quieter than water and lower than the grass. However, the girl did not understand why everyone treated her this way. However, she was incredibly beautiful, and when she grew up, she would die at the hands of the Empress, who was jealous of her beauty. The main character decided to avoid this at all costs. However, while still a child, she understands that running away is not an option, because she is still too young. The main character suggests that perhaps by working as a maid, she can save some money and then run away when she grows up. After all, she understands that the Emperor's palace and the Empress's palace must be avoided by hook or by crook. And she understands that they can't let them see her. Charlize understands that this is all for the sake of her future, but no matter how hard she tries, this is now her reality. She doesn't care that life is full of suffering and anxiety, and she understands that something bright can be found. The lady thought that today is a wonderful day, because the most beautiful person in the whole world is waiting for her, and this is Rose. A lady with red hair was walking in the garden and picked a rose flower. A girl runs up to her and hugs her. Rose asks the girl to be careful, otherwise she might fall. Hearing this, Charlize thought that she would take pity on her and hug her. The lady with red hair hugs the girl and asks if everything is fine at work. However, the girl smiled, and Rose again asks if no one is making fun of her. At this time, Charlize thought that only once she could complain to her sister, and then the girl starts crying. Surprised, Rose asks what happened, and the little lady talks about how they make her carry a huge pile of laundry over and over again. The girl remembers that the maids assigned her the most exhausting work. The main character understands that it was so hard for her that she seemed about to go crazy. After all, the maids always gave her hard work that she could barely cope with. And the little girl understood that she could only share her experiences with Rose. After all, this is the only person who will listen to her and maybe support her. Charlize says that everything is very bad and she can't cope. The lady with red hair calms her down and tells her that she doesn't need to worry so much because she has it. The next day, the head maid reports that this is outrageous and it is unacceptable to mock someone like that. And he says that he will personally ensure that each of the maids does her job. And then he invites them not to even think about cheating. The main maid came to completely sort it out, and she transferred the maids who forced the main character to carry laundry to the laundry room. And at this time, the little girl thought that justice had triumphed. However, Charlize understands that now they hate her even more because they have become even ruder. The little girl reflects that the situation was resolved literally in a day, and she thought that Rose was probably from a noble family. Madame Rose was a girl with a sweet face and hair, the color of a scarlet rose and just like the Empress from the novel. Suddenly, Charlize doesn't think about how she dared compare Rose to that villain, and she doesn't understand what kind of nonsense is popping into her head. However, if you think like this, even in the Imperial Palace, which is full of full beauties, there is no one more beautiful than Rose. The main character understands that if the Emperor sees her, he will never leave her alone. And suddenly I thought that maybe the Emperor had already done something bad to my little sister. Rose asks the girl what is wrong with her. She thinks that something is bothering her. Charlize says that everything is fine. She just wanted to ask if she knows His Highness the Emperor. And at that time I thought that His Majesty could not hold a candle to such a lovely girl. The main character suggests that apparently this is just a misunderstanding because apparently the little sister does not like the Emperor. And she says that Rose is much more dear to her than His Majesty. The young lady asks the girl when the time comes to choose which palace she would like to work in. Charlize replies that it doesn't matter to her, and the main thing is that Rose is with her. Hearing this, the red-haired girl says that this little girl is the best, and she loves her very much, and then hugs her very tightly. At this time, the main character thought that she would like to spend every day with this lady. When Charlize was carrying a bucket of water, the maid suddenly opened the door and screaming called her name. Out of fright, the little girl fell to the floor and spilled a bucket of water. The maid asks if she is finished yet. However, the little girl replies that it is Becky's work. Hearing this, the maid tells her to go and clean the lobby. The maid says that she doesn't have time for all sorts of trifles, and Charlize says that Becky can help her. However, the maid does not listen and says that she must do her job, and therefore wishes her luck. The main character thought that today is her sister's birthday, and she is worried that she will suddenly not be able to congratulate her. The little girl takes a broom and thinks that all is not lost, because as soon as she finishes cleaning, she will no longer have any problems, and therefore she will have free time. And she understands that she needs to get it done as soon as possible. Charlize filled a bucket of water, but when she entered the lobby, she saw Oken Gryazny the floor. The little girl understands that she must meet her sister, because she will not be there for the next 2 weeks. And she is very interested in whether she is waiting for her. Suddenly, the main character injured her hand, and thought that she shouldn't cry, because of this, she might also be punished. And at that time, the girl thought about Rose and how much she wanted to see her. After all, it seemed to her that she could hear her voice right now. The main character heard her name, and when she raised her head, she saw Rose. The young lady looked at the girl's hands and asked in surprise what happened to her hands, and she wonders if she's in too much pain. Charlize, seeing her sister, asks how she ended up here. The lady explains that she was worried, so she came, because they had not seen each other for several days. Rosa inquires from the girl, whoever helps her with cleaning the lobby. And the little girl says that she must do all this herself, and she has no help. And then she apologizes for crying and claims that she shouldn't do that. The young mistress invites the girl to listen to her and says that she is not to blame for anything, and crying is completely normal, especially at her age. At this time, Charlize thought that this was not what she was worried about. After all, Her sister can sort everything out just like last time, but if she constantly has to stand up for her, then she will simply become a burden. Rose asks the girl if she trusts her. Hearing this, Charlize assures that of course she trusts her. It cannot be otherwise. The lady with red hair communicates that she should know that if she has problems, then she can always turn to her. Hearing this, the little girl thought that she should tell the lady everything, and then she did so. Rose asks if Becky is to blame for everything, and when the little girl confirmed her words, the lady doesn't understand how she dared. And at that time, I thought that if she beat her and broke her legs, Charlize would not forgive her for this. Suddenly, the main character remembered that the lady said her name, and then he asks his sister if she did something wrong. However, the lady with red hair assures that she is not to blame for anything and invites her to call everyone to help her. However, the little girl replies that she shouldn't do that as she doesn't want to bother anyone. Hearing this, Rose tells the girl that she will help her. However, the main character objects and says that she can handle it herself. The lady with red hair says that she can't do that. After all, when she looks at her, her heart bleeds. The little girl claims that the lady works in another palace, and therefore it will be difficult for her to work 2 jobs. However, Rose invites her not to be afraid and assures that no one will know about this. At this time, the little girl thought that she did not want her sister to suffer because of her. However, she understands that the lady is determined and will help her in any case. And then the girl thanks the lady. When the main character looked at the young lady, she thought that now she was absolutely sure that Rose was from a noble family. And she doesn't understand. Such a weakling is clearly not used to hard work. Charlize asks her sister what happened, and the lady asks her for forgiveness and says that she is completely useless. Hearing this girl screams that this is not true since she helped her a lot. At this time, Rose says that she doesn't know how to lie. However, the girl assures her that she is very talented because she sings and embroiders well, and she also says that there is no one more beautiful than her. Hearing this, the lady with red hair says that she is very happy, and then he hugs the girl. The little lady apologizes and says that she is all dirty. However, for the lady, this does not matter. Charlize looked at the dirty floor and invites her sister to wait a little and explains that she will clean everything up. However, the lady invites her to rest herself and says that they will clean up together. The little girl says that she shouldn't work because she already helped her a lot, and she reports that she will manage it in the blink of an eye. And she says that this is the first time she has seen a lady sitting on the floor. And at this time, the main character thought that her sister was behaving like an aristocrat, and she was wondering where she worked. After all, maids from noble families usually work in the palace of the emperor or empress. Rose looked at the girl and asked what happened, and she was wondering if something upset her. Little girl, answer that nothing upset her. However, the lady assures that this is not the case and offers to help her after all. After some time, the main character heard that the maid was calling her, which claims that there is only 5 minutes of work here, and she digs around for so long, and then asks if she's finished. At this time, the main character thought that Becky continued to mock her even in front of Rose. The maid says that she dares to think that it is worthy to work in the imperial palace, and then she smiles and says that she should do it thoroughly. Suddenly, Rose cries out that she is not, and then says that judging by how arrogant she is acting, she must be the same Becky. The surprised maid asks, "Lady, who else is she?" And at that time she looked at the fact that she did not have a brooch, and this means that this lady is on probation, just like her. The maid says that she finds it funny, and he asks if she's new because they don't know each other. The girl with red hair claims that she is pushing the work onto the child. There is not a shadow of shame on her face, and that's why she considers her just a small fry. Hearing this, the maid asks how dare she say that, and the lady says that she is interested because she does not understand how such mediocrity was hired. Since the maid has nothing to answer, she takes a bucket of dirty water. Seeing this, the little girl quickly stands in front of the lady and the dirty water ends up on her. Charlize, wet and dirty, turns to the lady and asks if she's okay. Surprised, Rose says that she is not the one to worry about now, and looking at her, she says that she might catch a cold. The young lady takes a handkerchief and wipes her face. However, the little girl tells her not to worry and says that everything is fine. At this time, the maid asks if she has cooled down, and then she claims that it suits her even better. The maid offers to listen to the new girl about how she might like her, but only because she doesn't know her. However, Rose does not understand what she is talking about and asks about it. The maid claims that the girl is simply being used because the head maid loves her, and she explains that she forced her to work in the laundry, and she is holed up here. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was lying, because she had always mocked her. The maid turns to the girl and talks about how she is so good, and invites her to show her what she is capable of. Suddenly, a maid comes into the room and addresses the Empress and greets her. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. The little lady thought that Hayden was the name of the chief maid in the Empress's palace. The chief maid turns to the Empress and says that she ran away somewhere, and that's why she immediately went to look for her. But when she looked at the wet floor and the dirty girl, she didn't understand what was happening here and asked about it. At this time, the surprised Betty wanted to quickly run away, but the mistress stopped her. Charlize doesn't understand why she didn't immediately realize that sister was the Empress. After all, everything pointed to this, and she looks like a blooming rose. The girl reflects on the fact that no maid can be so elegant and majestic, and she doesn't understand why she didn't understand anything right away. The little girl thought that probably she was just trying not to pay attention, and that means little sister Rose would kill her. But at this time, the Empress invites Betty to apologize to Charlize. The little girl heard this and was surprised. Rose asks the maid if she is deaf. Then she claims that when she argued with her, she heard everything perfectly. Hearing this, the maid became uncomfortable, and she asked the girl for forgiveness. At this time, the main character thought that she had been waiting for this for so long, but she did not feel any relief. The maid turns to the girl and says that she was wrong, and she really is sorry. Charlize says it's okay because she also behaved wrong. The Empress says that she does not hear sincerity in the words of the maid, and then he orders her to kneel and show that she really repents. However, the little girl says that she shouldn't do this because she won't be offended. The lady with red hair claims that she is offended, and then he asks Betty why she has become like a pillar and wonders if he can throw her out into the street because perhaps then it will come to her. The maid heard this, falls to her knees and screams that she is very sorry and says that she was wrong and then asks for forgiveness. Rose tells the little girl that she must choose her own punishment. Hearing this, she replies that she cannot. The Empress turns to Betty and tells her that for the next year, in addition to her regular duties, she will be cleaning the lobby and everything must be perfect. And the lady says that in addition, she will cut her salary, and her promotion to head maid will be delayed for another 3 years. And then he tells her to get out of her sight. The Empress turns to Charlize and asks if her hands hurt. However, the girl assures her that everything is fine. Rose asks why she says that everything is fine, because she sees that it is not. The girl turns to Her Majesty and tells her to forgive her for her troubles. The lady with red hair tells the little girl that they will meet tomorrow. And then Hayden offers to take Charlize a room. However, the main character assures that this is not necessary and says that she will go herself. Hearing this, Rose tells the maid that they have to go. When the Empress left, Charlize thought that she had said until tomorrow and thought that she had listened to her. The main character remembers the first time she met Rose. After all, then she sat under the bushes with roses and cried from resentment. How suddenly I saw a girl who asked why she was crying. Charlize looked at the lady in surprise and asked who she was, and the lady replies that her name is Rose. The girl wonders if she has arrived on a visit to the palace, and then he says he can take her out. At this time, the Empress replied that there was no need to accompany her anywhere, since she was a maid and she had returned from vacation, and therefore did not have time to change clothes. The lady asks the girl why she is crying. However, the main character replies that it doesn't matter, and Rose says that if she doesn't want to, then maybe she shouldn't tell her, and then asks if she can find out her name. The girl says that her name is Charlize and she is a commoner, and therefore she has no last names. The Empress says that she has a wonderful name, and from now on she will only call her that. When the main character heard this, she was very happy. After all, this meant that they would meet again and ask if that was true. The mistress strokes the girl's cheeks and says that they will now meet often since both are maids. When Charlize was lying in her bed in the evening, she thought that Rose was no longer there, but Her Majesty the Empress. The next morning, the head maid came to Charlize and asked if she believed her. After all, now she will serve in the Empress's palace. Hayden reports that Her Majesty personally transferred her, and she says that she doesn't know the reason, but she seems to like Charlize. The little girl says that she is not doing a good job, but the maid assures her that she will do a great job and everything will be fine. Hayden tells Charlize that they are leaving at 2 o'clock, and therefore she needs to hurry. The main character heard this and understood what the Empress meant by the word tomorrow, and I thought that even in a cage with tigers it's calmer, and she worries that she has no idea how she now needs to introduce herself to the Empress. The girl collected all her things and thought about how, no matter what, she couldn't be late. When the main character arrived at the Empress's palace, she thought that it was beautiful, because she had never seen such a beautiful building. Charlize reflects on the fact that she was brought here by order of the Empress, and suddenly she heard that the maids were saying that you couldn't look at her without tears, and they wonder what the Empress saw in her. The maids hope that this little thing does not consider itself equal to them, and after this gossip, the little girl thought that everyone hated her again. Suddenly the head maid screams and asks what they are doing, and then the maids saw the Empress and bowed their heads before her. Hayden says that they have enough rest and suggests returning to work. When the Empress came closer, Charlize bowed her head and said that she was greeting Her Majesty the Empress, who is the magnanimous mother of nations, as well as the beautiful moon of the empire. Hearing this, the lady says that she has not heard such a polite greeting for a long time, and she says that she wouldn't want to hear it from her. And at that time, the girl thought that she also didn't want to always greet her like that, but didn't know if she could still call her little sister Rose. The Empress says, "Welcome, Charlize," and invites Hayden to show her to the room. The little girl bowed her head in front of the head maid and said that she was Charlize, and today she was brought to the Empress's palace, and therefore she offers to accept her best wishes. The maid says that the girl seems to be very nervous and reports that Her Majesty asked to take care of her, namely, to help her get used to it quickly, and therefore suggests that she not worry. Hayden looked at the girl's suitcase and asked if these were all her things. Charlize replies that this is all she has. The head maid says that she has already worked in the palace for 5 years and asks if this is all she has. The girl replies that she took all this with her. Hayden turns to the girl and says that they will now make up for lost time and asks if she will carry her suitcase. However, the main character objects and says that she can handle it herself. The head maid claims that this suitcase is the size of her, and so he still offers to help her and tell the girl not to be shy. The main character looked at the maid and thought that at first she seemed so cold and indifferent to her. However, it turned out that Hayden is not like that at all. When they entered the room, the main maid says that now it belongs to her. The little girl was surprised because the room was large and beautiful. Charlize says that she hasn't been accepted yet. However, the maid tells her not to worry about it. After all, from this day on she officially works in the Empress's palace, and this is her room. Hayden invites the girl to change clothes and rest a little. When the main character lay down on the bed, she thought that it was soft and very comfortable. And she also has a brand new clean uniform and even her own room, which she dreamed about so much. And the girl thought that she really liked it here. Suddenly, Charlize heard the maids talking about how the Empress had hired some girl. And then they say that the head maid went to get a pink hole for this little one. The maids say that they do not understand what it is about her, that she has received a personal invitation from the Empress. The girl realizes that maids wear brooches indicating their position. Ordinary maids also have a ruby brooch. The elders have a crystal one, and the main one has topaz, and that's probably why Becky decided that the rose was not officially accepted, because she didn't have a brooch. After all, usually no one takes them off without a special reason. Charlize thought that only high-ranking maids who had their own subordinates could wear the brooch, and you can't hate her simply because she's younger. Suddenly, the maids heard a question about what they were doing here, and the woman with the yellow brooch says that they are having fun and then asks if everyone is tired of living here. At this time, the main character thought that this was the head maid Weber, and she was the one who went to her for the brooch. Weber turns to the maids and asks them if they remember what Her Majesty said yesterday. And then he reminds them that tomorrow a little girl, their new maid, will arrive here for the first time in the palace, and therefore they must take care of her. The chief maid claims that the Empress told them to take care of the new girl, and for this purpose she specially gathered them too, in order to personally ask them about it. And then he claims that they dared to disobey Her Majesty and mock Charlize. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why the Empress is so worried about her. After all, she understands that she was deceiving her all the time. The maid asks Weber if she is really satisfied with everything. After all, the little one came out of nowhere, and the Empress already adores her. The head maid asks what's wrong with this, and then he says that everyone in the palace has their own role. They have their own, and so does she. The maid claims that the girl does almost nothing. Weber heard this, screaming and saying that she is the only one who can cheer Her Majesty. And only Charlize can do this. At this time, the little girl does not understand how she could not help but trust Rose. The eldest Weber reports how it was not, but the Empress personally appointed her as a servant, and asks if they decided to condemn her order. And then he says that if everything is clear to them, then they should return to work. When Weber entered Charlize's room, she asked if they upset her. The girl replies that no, and at that time she thought about what she knew, what she was eavesdropping on. The woman apologizes for not greeting her properly, and then says that she is very glad to meet you, and says her name is Lisa Weber, and she is the head maid at the Empress's palace. Lisa puts a pink bow on her neck and says that she wishes her third sister good luck. And then he asks if he can call her Charlie, and the girl agrees, and then asks if this means that each maid is responsible for 3. Lisa says that the Empress loves order and does not like waste. At this time, the main character thought about what she had read, that there were too few people in the Empress's palace, and therefore she did not trust anyone. But it turns out everything is different. The head maid reports that the Empress is always busy. After all, she gets up before dawn and starts work, and she works until the night. And even on weekends, the Empress continues to work, although she worries about her. Lisa reports that what worries her most is that because of her work, the Empress does not always have time to eat. Hearing this, the little girl asks when she is resting. The maid thought a little and said that at first she did not rest at all. But now on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Charlize thought that her sister Rose came to her on Tuesdays and Saturdays and they spent time together. Lisa says that nothing makes the Empress happy except for her, and therefore asks the girl to try to make her smile more often. But first, he offers to have a snack. Hearing this, Charlize was surprised and said that the Empress had not had dinner yet and asked if they could. The maid replies that, of course, it's possible, because she won't mind. And then he reports that the Empress's palace has the most delicious rice and that it can't be found anywhere else. The head maid invites the girl to go eat and then says that the train is leaving the platform and the next station is a restaurant. When the girl sat down at the table, she saw a lot of delicious food. And then he asks if this is all for the Empress. Lisa replies that it is for them and her. The little girl says that the food here is very tasty because the food looks not only appetizing, but also varied. Lisa looked at the girl and asked if she could touch her on the cheek. And the little lady replies that she can do whatever she wants. The maid crushes her cheeks and says that she is cute and has a face just like pudding. And then he invites the girl to try another food. But the girl objects and says that she will not eat anything else because she has eaten too much. Eloisa asks Her Majesty if she wants anything. The Empress replies that she does not need anything and is not hungry. The lady with red hair asks how Charlie is doing and says that today is her first day and asks if she is slowly getting used to it. Lisa replies that it looks like that and says that the girl is very smart and sweet. Her Majesty says that this is so because Charlize is simply a miracle. The head maid reports that the mistress can't even imagine how happy she was when she saw her room, and she says that she smiled so contagiously that she could not resist. And at that time, the Empress thought that she would like to see her smile. Lisa says that Charlize is very smart and has a good vocabulary, but she is so quiet and therefore it is difficult for her to communicate. The Empress says that she is coping much better now. And then he remembers their first meeting, that she was still too small, but was very shy. And the more often she sees her, the more she realizes that she cannot let her go. Her Majesty remembers the girl's words that she wanted her sister to stay with her, because therefore she would be very happy. After all, no matter what she does not scold her but helps her to improve. The Empress understands that she did not even expect to hear something like this from her, and decided to find out about Charlie to her surprise. The lady with red hair found out that the girl was being bullied by everyone, and so she couldn't just leave it like that and tried to protect her. However, she only made it worse, and so she decided to transfer the girl to her palace, where it was safe. Rose realizes that to do this, she had to reveal her identity, because then she could officially arrange her as her maid. But suddenly all her plans collapsed, and in the end it was she who caused her the most pain. The Empress reflects that even here she cannot protect her, and then say that yesterday she personally asked everyone to treat her well, and asks what happened in the morning. Lisa says that others don't seem to like Charlize, and the lady asks how to understand this. The maid explains that they blame her for everything because she is younger and only recently transferred. Hearing this, the Empress asks how they didn't dare, and she says that she only asked for one thing, and they can't do that either. Her Majesty is angry and says that it looks like it's time to remind the maids who owns the palace. Lisa invites the Empress not to worry and says that she will sort everything out, and asks the lady to eat better. And he says that Charlize will be upset if he finds out that she doesn't eat well. Heard this lady asks if it is true, and the maid says that little Sister Rose doesn't eat anything and doesn't take care of herself at all, and that's why Charlie should worry. The lady says that she will eat right away. Lisa looked at Her Majesty and thought that she had not seen her like this for a long time. After all, since they moved here, she has not shown any emotions. The Empress asks the maid if Charlize will like dinner, and she replies that she really liked it. The head maid thought that thanks to this girl, Her Majesty was feeling better and better. The next morning, the main character looked at herself in the mirror and thought that she was ready, and all she had to do was go out. Because she not only works officially, but she is also responsible for the other maids, and therefore she doesn't have to worry. Charlize recalls that Mrs. Weber helped her a lot, because she showed her the whole palace and all the rooms in it, and also showed people who need to be remembered, and she must know every maid by name and face. The main character thinks that she will help everyone, and for this she needs to make a good impression. After all, she will try her best, and besides, she doesn't want to let the Empress down. The girl approaches the maids who were doing the cleaning and, screaming, greets them. And then she says that her name is Charlize and asks if she can help them with anything. The maids also greeted the girl and asked why she got up so early and what she needed. The girl replies that she just wanted to help them. The maid with pink hair says that there is no need because they can handle their work themselves and tells the lady not to worry. Charlize asks for forgiveness and says that it seems to her that she didn't see her yesterday, and then asks where yesterday's maids are. The maid reports that, by order of Her Majesty, all the old maids were transferred from the palace. Hearing this, the girl was surprised and screaming asked if they were here, and at that time I thought that it was not because of her. Suddenly, Mrs. Weber comes up to her and says that she has found her. Charlize asks her if she can ask a question. The head maid talks about how she can ask whatever she wants. A little girl wonders why all the maids have been replaced. Only the maid smiled, and at that time the girl thought that it was true that because of her, they were all fired. Lisa suggests that the girl take hand cream and don't forget to use it. Charlize thanked Miss Weber for taking such good care of her. The head maid claims that she is not the one to thank, and this surprised the girl a little, and she asks who she should thank. Lisa explains that the Empress gave this cream to her because she is very worried about her hands. And the little girl looked at the jar and thought that Rose had not forgotten. The maid says that Her Majesty yesterday before going to bed asked if everything was fine with her, and she says that it seems that the Empress loves her very much. At this time, the main character, while cleaning, thought that everyone had mocked her before, and there was only scraps of food. After all, now she understands that she sleeps in a soft bed and eats all sorts of goodies. And if this is a dream, then she doesn't want to wake up. Suddenly, the little girl heard her name and saw Lisa asking what she was doing here. And then the maid asks her to get up and says that she has been sitting for so long that her legs are numb, and she is also covered in dust. Charlize tells the maid not to touch her because she will get all dirty. However, Hayden assures that it's okay because it's just dust. At this time, the maid thought that the girl's heart was pounding, and then he says that only a child could polish everything like that. And at that time, the main character looked at the maid and thought that something was wrong because she was unhappy. Charlize assures the woman that she can do a better job with another job, and she says that she can do laundry and can sweep the floor. She also knows how to clean a fireplace. Hearing this, Hayden is surprised and asks if she had to clean the fireplace. Suddenly, the Empress approached them and asked in surprise whether the girl was forced to clean the fireplace. Hayden, seeing Her Majesty, says that it is an honor that she visited them, and the little girl repeats after her. The surprised Empress says that enough pleasantries and then tells Charlize to answer whether she really cleaned the fireplace. The little girl replies that she did this because she is, after all, a maid. Rosa, screaming, asks why she didn't tell her that she was given such a dangerous job. And then he apologizes and turns to Charlize and suggests that she not do anything like that again, at least until she turns 15. The Empress looks at the girl and states that she forbids her to do hard work. And then she turns around and says that she has to go. At this time, the main character thought that the Empress could at least tell her what she could do. Charlize understands that if Rose treats her specially, then the others will not understand it. Hayden asks the girl if she heard the Empress's words, and then he talks about how children shouldn't do dangerous work and asks if she understands. The main character reflects on the fact that she does not understand how Her Majesty constantly appears at the most necessary moment. After some time, Charlize reflects on the fact that the most important thing she has learned in 5 years is to obey in order to survive. After all, that's why the little girl captures the atmosphere well and can say that everyone loves the Empress. But that wasn't the case in the book. When Charlize helped Lisa, she learned that Her Majesty had helped her a lot. And the main character asks how exactly. Lisa explains that she grew up in a poor family, and that's why the Empress took her to work. The main character looks at the maid and asks what she would like when she becomes the head maid. Lisa replies that first of all she would like money because the main maid earns a lot. After all, that's why she could help her family and arrange her future. Weber says that someday a little girl will become the main maid, and then she will remember her words. At this time, Charlize thought about what worries her most now, how to behave with the Empress. After all, she doesn't understand. However, she cannot say this. Lisa asks the girl if she wants to know about the Empress's past, and she says that she heard that Hayden was her nanny. The maid says that Her Majesty has always been sweet and smart, and of course when she went out into the world, men always crowded around her. Charlize says that it cannot be otherwise because there is no one more beautiful than her. And suddenly the main character thought that she saw the Empress, but it turns out she only imagined it. The maid saw a worried girl and asked what happened, and at that time the girl thought that she had seen it again. However, from behind the bush she saw a little red hair and thought that there, maybe the Empress, only she has such hair. However, Charlize realizes that this cannot be and then rubs her eyes. The maid looked at the girl and asked if something got into her eye. The girl looks at the bush and asks Hayden what the Empress is doing. The maid replies that it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and most likely she is sorting out papers. And then she says that she doesn't know yet, but the Empress is very busy and wonders why the girl is asking about this. At this time, Charlize thought that this busy Empress was hiding in the bushes right now, and she says that she is now Her Majesty's maid, and therefore should know her routine. The girl reflects on the fact that this look, however, she understands that the lady is no longer Rose, and therefore she needs to control herself. When the maid left with the little girl, the Empress came out from behind a bush and thought that no one had noticed her. As Hayden combed her hair, Her Majesty asked her how much longer she was going to keep an eye on Charlize. The Empress heard this, asking the maid how she knew about it, and she explained everything to her. However, the Empress did not even know about it, because she thought that she was hiding well. She wondered if Charlize had noticed her and asked the maid about it, and she says that she doesn't want the girl to know about it. Hayden assures that if she continues to hide like this, she will get in the way of everyone. Her Majesty understands that she is doing a little stupidly, but she still worries that Charlize may still be angry with her, and he says that he wants to apologize, but doesn't know how. The maid asks Her Majesty if this girl is dear to her. The lady replies that of course, it means that she dotes on her. The Empress reports that this little girl always smiles sincerely and treats her with a completely open mind. And when she looks at her smile, she immediately forgets about everything that worries her. The lady says that the maid knows everything perfectly well, that people follow her only because she is an empress, because she is the one who stands above everyone. The Empress is the First Lady of Wanzer, and that's why everyone envy her. However, the lady understands that she did not want such a life, and she did not want to be called Your Majesty the Empress. The lady with red hair understands that she is Heloise, and it doesn't matter. Hayden turns to Her Majesty and says that it is worth having a serious conversation with the girl, and she says that she is a smart girl and thinks she will understand her. However, the Empress worries what if this is not the case, and what if she will never forgive her. However, the maid assures her that it is better to do this than to remain silent all her life. And then she remembers that she herself said that she values Charlize. The Empress, without wasting any time, immediately came into the girl's room and said that they needed to talk. And after that, they go to the garden. And the main character thought about what? This is the place where she went to cry before she met the Empress. Her Majesty says that this is actually not even the palace itself, but just an extension. And then he invites the girl to sit next to her. The lady with red hair asks the girl if she remembers the day they met, and it reminds her that she asked her if she came here to visit, and she offered to carry it out. The Empress says that she said that the maid explains, because as soon as people find out who she is, they immediately begin to shun her. The lady says that she wants her to be Heloise, not an empress, and then she says that she probably thinks she's just making excuses, but she doesn't deny that she lied to her. At this time, Charlize thought that, to be honest, the fact that Rose lied to her hurt her even more than the fact that she turned out to be an empress. After all, she understands that everything that happened between them was a complete lie. However, the girl does not understand how she would treat her if she knew the truth from the very beginning, and at this time she realizes that she is no longer alone, just like Charlize, and perhaps the Empress is not the same as in the book. The main character understands that she is too fixated on her prejudices and thinks that all this is because of her. The Empress says that since they met, she has always looked up to her. After all, you can't tell from her look that she's still a child. Charlize says that she was an ordinary orphan, and now she works in the Empress's palace, and she thought that her look showed that she had lost her most precious thing, her sister Rose. Her Majesty turns to the girl and invites her to smile at her, not as an empress, but as Eloise, and she says that when she is with her, she forgets about pain and loneliness. The lady with red hair reveals that their friendship is based on lies, and she feels really bad about it. Hearing this, the main character reassures Her Majesty and says that there is no need to bow to the maid, and then asks why she is doing this. The Empress explains that everything is her fault, and says that she does not want to lose her, and therefore must at least try to change. Hearing this, Charlize was very surprised and then said that he forgives her. When the red-haired lady heard this, she was very happy, and then she hugged the girl, and at that time they were already smiling together. Her Majesty thanks the girl, and the little lady says that she values her very much. The lady with red hair turns to the girl and says that when they are alone, she can call her Rose, and she shouldn't speak to her, Her Majesty, but simply address her on a personal level. Hearing this, Charlize was surprised and said that she was afraid of messing something up and asked if it was really possible. The young lady replies that it is even necessary. The girl says that if she makes a mistake, she may be misunderstood. The Empress says that she doesn't care because she wants to be her sister Rose, and he invites the girl to communicate as before. When the Empress touched the little lady's hand, she asked her if she remembered to use the cream, and the girl replies that she smears it on her skin every evening. However, the lady was surprised and asked why her hands were so dry. It even hurt her to look at it, because Charlize didn't answer but simply hugged her friend. And at this time, the Empress thought that it seemed that this girl was happy, and therefore she would also be happy with her. At this time, the girl remembered that she had completely forgotten about the main character. After all, she had never thought about it before. But in the novel, the Emperor and Empress were antagonists, and the main character is the Crown Prince. Exiled by Emperor Diamond Carpel de Windsor, took revenge on the Emperor and Empress and regained his throne. However, the main character understands that it is not far from here, as it was described in the book, because now the Crown Prince is completely alone. And perhaps the Empress is different, but it is unlikely that the future can be changed so radically. Suddenly, the Empress hugged the girl's face and said that she was very pale, and asks if something hurts her. After all, she thinks that she was too hasty. The lady with red hair says thank God there is no fever, and the girl tells her not to worry. And at that time, she thought that her sister Rose was the most important to her, and that she would always protect her. The main character reflects on the fact that she will not allow Rose to die, and therefore we must not forget about the Crown Prince, who is 3 years older. After all, for the first time after 200 years, thanks to the imperial family, the power of the god Aurelius awakened in him, and with her help, he was able to defend himself from the emperor. However, the agreement between the imperial family and God had to be strictly observed. To contain the prince, he was locked in his palace, where he sat all alone, suffering from constant pain. And at this time, the main character thought that he was just an 8-year-old who was locked up. And after thinking a little, she decided that she did not see any problems. After all, he just needs to get it into his head that he shouldn't kill Rose. Charlize thinks that it wouldn't hurt to get to know the protagonist better. After all, She understands that he is a child, and she wonders if something could go wrong. The main character at that time had no idea what monstrous consequences this would lead to. Walking along the corridor, a little girl is met by a maid and asks if she ate well. The girl replied that yes, and at that time she thought that the Empress must be somehow connected with the prince, and she doesn't understand whether it's possible to ask about him here. Charlize reflects that she must find out where he is being held, and she says that she heard that somewhere nearby there is a prince's palace. Suddenly, the maid turns to her and, screaming, tells her to speak more quietly, and then asks if he told her that. The main character says that the maids were just discussing it, and at this time I thought that I couldn't say how I really knew. Hearing this, the maid thought that they needed an eye and an eye. Charlize asks if he's around, then why has she never seen him? The maid says that he is not far from the garden. The girl asks if this castle could be haunted. The Empress's maid tells Charlize to never approach him. The girl asks why, and she explains that the crown prince is practically an emperor, and therefore you need to treat him with special respect because his friend will not like something. And he says that it is dangerous there. The maid reports that His Highness has special powers, which he is not yet able to control. And at this time, the girl thought that she was not afraid of his strength, but still she should be careful. A few minutes later, the maid Lisa came up to them and said that the Empress was working and working all the time, and in the morning she was absolutely full of energy. The maid says that she is afraid that Her Majesty will overwork herself. After all, perhaps he's just trying to finish everything as quickly as possible. When Charlize heard this, she thought that it seemed like everything was her fault. Hayden asks if she is resting. Lisa says no, and if she asks her to eat, she simply smiles back. And at this time, the maids do not understand what to do. However, Charlize says that she can talk to her. And at that time, she looked at the surprised maids and thought that she had blurted out something unnecessary. Lisa says that this is simply wonderful, because the Empress will not be able to refuse her. And then she says that the girl is smart. The maid says that she will take something to eat and invites Charlize to go to the Empress. And at this time, the main character thought that it was even better, because she would be able to personally ask her about the prince. But first, the Empress must eat something tasty, and then they will talk. Charlize knocked on the door and said that she had come. The Empress asks what she wanted, and the girl explains that everyone is worried about her. Her Highness asks the girl if Hayden sent her, and then she says that she thought that she was just bored and reports that she has no time to rest. And at this time, Charlize thought that she would have to resort to a secret weapon, and she says that she wants a cake, and therefore offers to drink tea together. Rose hugs the girl and asks how she can resist, and then he agrees to drink tea with her. Her Majesty turns to the girl and asks how she can be so sweet. And at this time, the main character thought that she was ashamed, but the main thing was that it worked. The Empress invites the girl to sit down and asks if she will have tea with milk. The girl asks if she remembers, and the lady replies that of course she remembers everything she likes. When Rose has made tea, she says that she wants to ask her something, and the girl asks what exactly. The young mistress asks the girl if she really wants to work as a maid. Hearing the question, Charlize doesn't know what to make of it. The Empress explains that she simply wanted to protect her, but does not want to force her to work. And then she says that her heart almost broke when she saw her pushing this giant cart. At this time, the little lady thought that she thought it would be more convenient for everyone. Rosa claims that she's still just a child, and therefore she thinks no one will mind, and when she grows up she can start working again. I heard this girl object and say that she doesn't want this, and she's grateful for the job, because everyone is so fussy about her. Charlize explains that she was hanged unfairly and that the others are probably unhappy. The Empress asks why she thinks it's unfair and then claims that she is well acquainted with the rules. The young mistress says that in order to be promoted, the maid must work for at least a year and receive approval from the senior maid. And she says that she has been in the palace for 5 years, because she already knew in advance how it works. The Empress says that she asked the head maid, and she said that the girl was a great fellow, and that's why Charlize deserved a promotion. Rose says that she doesn't want the young lady to worry about such things and suggests that she just enjoy life, since she is still so young. And then she talks about what is important to her, what she herself wants. Charlize reports that she is very happy, and she also wants to continue working at the palace. Hearing this, the Empress agrees with her and says that if she changes her mind, She must tell her about it. And then he offers to continue their tea party. The Empress asks if the girl remembers this cookie and points to it with her finger. And at this time, the little girl thought that she could not forget about this, since this was the first sweetness in her life. After all, back then she had no idea that something so delicious could happen. Charlize says that Rose treated her, and hearing this, the lady asks if she remembers. The girl has full cheeks and says that it is very tasty. Seeing her, her mistress asks if she can touch her cheeks, and at that time the girl thought that Mrs. Weber had asked for the same thing, and she doesn't understand whether everyone really likes her cheeks so much. Charlize agrees that the mistress touched her cheeks, and at this time the Empress says that she is so cute, and she can ask that such cookies be baked every day, and he says that she can eat it as much as she wants. Seeing the cheerful Empress, the main character thought that now was the most opportune moment, and she says that she also wanted to ask something. The girl says that next to the palace there is such a gloomy castle, like a haunted house, and asks if the prince lives there. The Empress heard this and asked why she was interested in this. However, the girl claims that it seems to her that everyone is avoiding him, and at that time she thought about what might cost her to stop, but he asks if she hates him. Rose replies that not at all, and in fact she feels sorry for him. After all, His Majesty the Emperor took the throne from him. When the main character heard this, she thought about whether it was possible to talk about the Emperor like that. The young mistress explains that this is not exactly what she meant. Charlize asks if His Majesty the Emperor hates the prince. The lady says that she cannot know about this, but she is ashamed that she followed the lead, that she pretended not to notice anything. And then the Empress says that she is too interested in the Emperor for some reason. And at this time, the main character thought that maybe she was really destined to die because of the jealousy of the Empress. Rose says that the Emperor is still a bastard, and then he asks why she is interested in men 20 years older. And at this time, the main character thought that it seemed to her that the Empress misunderstood her. Charlize takes the lady by the hand and says that she doesn't need any Emperor, and he assures her that she only needs her. Then she says that he is her husband after all, and she was interested, and then she apologizes for asking. The Empress hugged the girl again and said that she could do anything, and explained that she was just worried that the girl had her eye on such a non-entity. Rosa says that she doesn't understand what they see in him, and she reports that she tried to warn many worthy girls, but no one wants to listen to her advice. After all, she argued that it was not worth wasting her time on the Emperor, but everyone thought that she was simply jealous. At this time, the main character thought that now she understands why in the book the Empress was a jealous person who drove away all her rivals. However, it is strange to her how such a person got the most beautiful woman in the world. Charlize understands that the Empress hates the prince and she is ashamed of him, and at that time the girl thought that she would definitely make her sister Rose happy. When the main character went out onto the balcony, she thought that summer was coming, and she didn't understand when the prince would appear. And she reflects on the fact that it is possible to grow old like this, and that it would be better for her to do whatever it is for now. But suddenly Charlize thought that something strange was happening, and she didn't understand. Hayden asks the girl if she will help her. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, and then said that it was her first time, asked her for help, and asks what she should do. And at this time, the maid smiled and said that there was nothing special. And when they entered the room, the maid invites the girl to look around here, and the little girl saw the carts and the Empress, who said that it was for her. The young lady says that she is so eager to work and that is why she ordered her for you, and asks if she wants to try. Charlize took the cart and says that it is very convenient for her and just right. After all, it doesn't squeak when she rocks it. And then he thanks the Empress. The lady asks the girl if this is the way to thank her. Hearing this, the main character runs up to the lady and then hugs her and says, "Thank you so much." The maid reports that Her Majesty has an appointment. The lady says that she remembers and suggests that the maid wait a little. Rose turns to the girl and asks if she is very upset that she will have to leave. Charlize says that if so, then she needs to work, and she understands that. Hearing this, the Empress says that she is still smart and kind, and then he turns to the girl and says that he will return soon. Mrs. Weber turns to the main character and asks if she is busy, and then asks if there is something she can do for her. The maid asks Charlize to run into the living room and bring summer clothes. The girl agrees, and the maid thanks her, saying that she has nothing to thank her with, but offers to take at least some candy. And then he thanks the girl again and says that he is counting on her. At this time, the main character thought that it looked like this was some kind of package from the family. And, to be honest, she is a little jealous that her family cares about her. Charlize ate the candy and thought that it was delicious. And at that time, she thought that this was the most suitable hour. The girl looked at the castle and thought that it was impossible to show up there for no reason, but she can pretend that she got lost and ended up there completely by accident. And at that time, I thought that she was simply a genius. When the main character came to the castle, she thought that it was not a palace, but some kind of haunted house. After all, even the walls here are scary. Charlize does not understand how a child was locked in such a place, all alone. And at that time she saw a hole and thought that through it she could get into the middle of the castle. And then she crawled into it. Suddenly, the main character felt a sword near her neck. And then I saw a guy asking who she was. The guy invites the girl to answer and asks if the emperor sent her to kill him. Charlize heard this and assures him that it is not true. And the boy asks again who she is. The girl replies that she is a servant from the empress's palace. However, the guy wonders how she ended up here. The main character explains that she is lost. However, the guy screams that this is nonsense and claims that she climbed here through a hole in the wall. Hearing this, the girl began to cry and said that she did not want to offend him. At this time, the guy asks her to stop crying. And then the boy says that he doesn't care because no one would send such a little thing here. Hearing this girl asks if he believes her. The guy replies that he believes her and then asks her to leave. But suddenly the girl began to groan, and he looked at her and asked if she could get up, and she says her legs hurt. Then the guy invites her to sit on his back and asks if she wants to sit here all day. The girl thanks him, and the guy says that it's okay because to some extent he is also to blame. When Charlize sat on his back, she thought that this young man was very thin, and then she says that she needs to take more with her. But hearing this, the young master asks how she dares to order the prince around him. However, after these words, the girl began to cry again, and the prince says that she should calm down and says that he will take it away. At this time, the main character thought that she was so tired and would like to have some more candy. And then the girl asks if His Highness would like some candy. However, the guy objects and says that you never know what's in her. Hearing this, Charlize thought that she just wanted to treat him, but he couldn't come up with anything. After walking a little, the prince saw a bench and then sat down on it. The girl sat down next to him and thanked the guy, and then asks if he really doesn't want candy. However, the guy replies that he doesn't want to, and the girl claims that he won't die from just one piece of candy. Charlize shows the candy and invites the guy to eat it and explains that it is very tasty, and then he says that if he doesn't want it, then she will eat it herself. Seeing this, the prince says that just a minute ago she was roaring and now she is contently cracking the candies. The main character explains that candy helps with fatigue. However, the prince claims that no one except her thinks so. The young man and master are interested in how it happened that the child works for the empress. The girl explains that she was born in the emperor's palace, and her mother was a maid, but she died in childbirth. And at least that's what they told her. The prince heard this and said that he also has no parents, and at this time the girl does not understand why he drooped so much. And then I realized that they were both orphans, and she probably thinks that she is also lonely. At this time, the main character understands that she should not miss such a chance, and then she says that sometimes she gets very lonely. The guy says that he understands her perfectly. And at this time, the girl thought that sympathy had been won, and that's all she had left. And then he turns to His Highness and says that when he becomes sad, he should definitely eat something sweet. At this time, Charlize thought that even the Empress could not resist her cute face, and she would like the guy to take the candy. Suddenly, the prince screams that this is nonsense and says that she is ugly, and then asks if that's true. Hearing this, the girl thought that she was the second most beautiful in the entire empire. However, the main character understands that she is still just a child, and she looked at the guy and thought that he was not serious. The prince asks why she is addressing him as His Highness. The lady replies that he is the crown prince, and I thought that he looked exactly the same as he was described in the book. The guy agrees with her and says that it is so, but he wonders why she doesn't know what the others call him. The girl remembers that they usually called him Sir Diamanda and not Your Highness. After all, This is because no one believes that he will ascend to the throne. However, the girl knows for sure that he will come to take revenge and become emperor. The prince asks the girl if she is afraid of him. At this time, the main character also asks whether she should, and then he says that he is still so cute. Charlize thinks about him calling her ugly, but she won't dwell on it, and at this time she behaves just like an adult. The main character announces that it's time for her to go. Hearing this, the prince asks if she is serious. The girl explains that Mrs. Weber asked to give her clothes, and then they turn to His Highness and say that she will return. However, the prince says that it is not worth it, but Charlize claims that she will visit him again. And at that time, I thought that she would definitely get closer to him. When the girl ran away, the prince thought that she might actually return, and then he reflects on what he needs to forget, and should not hope for anything. When Charlize returned, she was met by the maids, and they do not understand why she is covered in dirt and ask what happened to her. The girl explains that she just fell along the road. At this time, the empress approached them. He says that there is no time for greetings now and says that the girl fell and asks if she hit herself hard. Charlize explains that everything is fine, but at that time I thought that she almost died there. She looked at the empress and thought that she might be punished for this. Rose asks the girl if she had fun without her, and she says that, of course, the most important thing for her is that she has fun. However, she claims that she would like to have fun with her too. The main character thought that the empress misunderstood her, and this meant that she would not be locked up at home. The girl says that next time she wants to play with Rosa. Hearing this, the young lord asks if this is true, and then says that he is looking forward to it. Lady hugs girl, and she says that Her Majesty will get dirty. However, the mistress says she is so cute. At this time, the prince remembers the girl, and he is interested in the question of whether she will come. Well, then he thinks that no one needs him. The next day, Charlize crawled through the hole again and hit her head again. And at this time, the main character thought that she needed to be more careful and not get dirty. Suddenly, she saw His Highness, and he asks why she came. Charlize explains that she promised and then asks if he always sits here and if he was waiting for her. The guy screams that he didn't, and the girl claims that she guessed right. The prince explains that he just went out for a little walk and tells the girl to trust him. At this time, the main character opens the box and says that she wanted to bring more food. But that's all there is. Seeing this food, the guy asks if this is all for him. And Charlize says that if he ate the candy, he would know that it was not poisoned. And then she looked at the guy and said that he still ate it. The prince says that he ate it, and the girl asks what flavor it is. He replies that it's strawberry and doesn't understand what the question is. Charlize turns to His Highness and persuades him that it is already getting cold and offers to eat in the castle. However, the guy thanks her and says that he is not hungry. The girl asks the guy if he is embarrassed that his castle is not cleaned. However, the guy objects and screams that this is not true, and at this time, the girl thought that he even stammered and seemed to be full of pride. The main character takes the guy by the hand and invites him to go eat bread because it is very tasty. When Charlize entered the castle, she thought that it was very dirty, and when they eat, she will begin to clean up. At this time, the prince took the girl by the hand and said that he would show her the dining room, and when they arrived, the girl saw a table full of food, and then asks the guy why he is starving then. The prince replies that it cannot be eaten. However, the girl claims that this kind of good is lost, and he says that since he doesn't want to eat, she will have to do it herself. When the girl touched the chicken, the guy screamed that he couldn't eat it. And then he cut through it with his ball. The main character does not understand why he did this, and the prince explains that this food should not be eaten and invites her to look at the blade. At this time, the girl saw that the blades had darkened, and the prince explains that the dagger is made of silver, but since she is still a minor, but still a servant of the empress, she must accept what this means. Charlize asks in surprise if the food is poisoned. The prince asks if she understood why he stopped her. However, the girl does not understand why the food is still on the table and asks him about it. And then he claims that he needs to throw it away now. However, the prince objects and says that the emperor personally sent him this food, and if he throws it away, then rumors will spread that he does not respect His Majesty. The young master says that even more hired killers will come for his soul, and at night it will be fun here. The guy says that the emperor himself understands that he will not eat anything, and he's just making fun of him. The prince says that he is locked here, and if the emperor poisons him, then no one will prove anything. After all, he is completely helpless. He also said that if the prince realized that he could no longer bear to eat, then all his torment would end. The surprised girl asks what he eats. The guy replies that His Majesty is very generous and he supplies him with enough food so that he does not die. And the dark-haired guy explains that if someone who has the blood of the past emperor dies of hunger, there will be no problems. But if you poison him, then you can make it look like he died from an illness. And then the prince invites her to look at the cupboard containing the food. When the main character looked at this food, she thought that he had been living like this for 5 years. But there is so much food there to not die of hunger. The boy turns to the girl and says that he thinks he won't surprise her like this. At this time, Charlize thought that she came here because the prince is the main character and she must save Rose from him. Well, now she wants to save Diamanda himself. The girl turns to the guy and says that no one deserves such treatment. At this time, I thought that maybe he had it even worse than she did, and this just makes him feel sorry. After all, she cannot understand, but even life cannot be called survival. The main character can't even imagine how he's still holding on. We thought that you want Diamanda to live a full life. Charlize turns to His Highness and says that now she will bring him food and offers him more, not to eat anything. Hearing this, the prince asks in surprise why she needs this. The main character explains that this is what people do, and then offers the guy a snack. And he says that the weather has already improved and suggests going outside. The girl went out into the sun and said that it was simply wonderful. And then he turns to His Highness and grabs his hand and tells him not to stand in the shadows, but to go with her. On the street, a girl asks how he likes the sun and says that it is very warm. The guy replies that he agrees with her. Sitting down on her knees, Charlize talks about making a sandwich. She took some bread, some lettuce, cheese, and tomato, and made a snack and then said it was ready. Diamanda says in surprise that she got over it quickly, and the main character gives him a sandwich and invites him to try it. The guy took one bite and said it was very tasty. And then Charlize takes a handkerchief and says that His Highness has crumbs on his lips. But suddenly the guy screams that he can handle it himself. The girl looked at how deliciously the guy was eating and asked if he should do more, and he agrees and tells her to do only one. When the prince ate, he thought that he was a little dirty and offered to give the girl a handkerchief. And the main character asks if he is embarrassed to ask her to wipe his mouth. But the guy says that's not the point. And at that time, the girl thought that he was pretending, but she says that she understood everything and gives him milk. Diamanda thanks the girl and says that there is no need to take care of him like that. Hearing this, the lady replies that she is a maid. However, the prince argues that even if she is a maid, he is already old enough to take care of himself, and it says that she looks very young. Hearing this, Charlize thought that even though she was young, this was her job. The prince asks how old the girl is, and she answers that she is 5. Hearing this, the guy was surprised, and the girl asked what it was. Diamanda claims that this is absurd because she is a 5-year-old maid. And then he says that he doesn't understand why the hell they take children as maids into the palace. Hearing this, the girl laughs, and he asks why she is doing this. Charlize explains that she is just laughing because Her Majesty the Empress said the same thing. At this time, the main character thought that His Highness didn't really like Her Majesty, and she thinks that it might be worth talking to Her Majesty, but the Empress feels guilty towards him. The girl is thinking about how to make the Empress like His Highness. Diamond asks the lady what her name is, and he says that he can't call her A and U forever. The girl says her name is Charlize, and His Highness says it's a beautiful name. Hearing this, the girl thought that as soon as he said this, it was like a knife to the heart. However, the prince says that this name does not suit her, and Charlize wonders what's wrong with her name. And he says that for such a little thing like her, this is too mature a name. The main character does not understand how a name can even be for children and adults. And she looked at him and thought what an impudent man he was and hit him. But he was the crown prince. The guy says that he will therefore call her Charlie, but seeing the surprised girl, he asks if she doesn't like it. The main character turns to His Highness and asks if he could be a little more polite. And then he explains that he said that her name did not suit her, and last time he called her ugly. And this incident with the knife also suggests that this all goes on from the very beginning, from the first meeting. Charlize asks His Highness if he hates her. However, the guy objects and says that this is not true at all. And then he explains that he said that Charlize's name is beautiful and it's not about her and she's not weird. and he says that she's just still so young, and therefore he didn't mean anything bad. And then Diamond, screaming, says that he simply cannot hate her, and he looks at the girl and says that she is just very sweet. After all, you take such good care of him and bring him such delicious food. The prince says that the girl came to chat with him again, and he is very glad that she came to him. After all, this means that for the first time someone besides him is in this palace. At that moment, the main character realized that Diamond was very hard and lonely. And although he is hostile towards the Empress, he simply could not open up. Charlize thought that given her status, this could be considered rude behavior. And then he says, turning to His Highness, that he will come to him even more often. And after this promise, the main character began to come to the palace to the Crown Prince every day, and every time she brought him something sweet and edible. The girl tells the prince that she brought him a dessert called milk pudding and says that she added caramel syrup to it. Diamond was surprised and said that he had only heard about puddings before and was seeing it with his own eyes for the first time. Charlize claims that this dessert is very, very tasty and invites him to try it. And at this time the girl noticed that the prince was shy, and then she realized that when the Empress gave her a cookie, she looked the same. After tasting a little, the prince asks if the girl will eat. However, Charlize objects and thanks him and informs him that this dessert was specially made for him. And then the girl says that she sees he liked the pudding. His Highness says that it tastes good to him, but he doesn't like eating alone. And he claims that if she doesn't eat, then he won't either. Charlize says this food is for His Highness, and the prince replies that he knows, but he said that he does not want to eat alone, and so he invites the girl to eat with him. After all, he wants to eat together. The main character agrees with him, and the guy heard this, smiled, and offered her a piece of pudding. Suddenly the girl, screaming, turns to His Highness and asks if he can smile more often from now on. However, the guy doesn't understand what he's talking about, and Charlize explains that his beauty is too priceless to hide behind such sullenness. And of course, people say that he is handsome when he's angry, but when he smiles, he is truly handsome. Taking some pudding, the girl reports that she does not have a spare spoon, and the guy assures her that she can use one and asks what the problem is. Charlize talks about how she can't share cutlery with His Highness. Diamond suggests quietly, "Open your mouth and say, 'ah.'" But the girl objects and says it's not necessary, and then the prince reports that his arm is about to fall off, and hearing this, the girl ate one spoon, and the guy wished her bon appétit. At this time, the main character thought that she was a fool, because her heart fluttered from the 8-year-old. The prince looked at the girl and asked if she was in pain. And then he said that it was strange for him, because before that everything was fine. At this time, the girl thought that this was not the point. After all, she did not understand what was wrong with her. The next day, Charlize brought His Highness pancakes, but when she entered the castle, she did not see anyone, and she wondered where he had gone. The girl does not understand where the prince is, and remembers that when she always came, he was somewhere nearby. Suddenly she saw a mouse and thought that there were no people here, but there were a lot of mice. And she remembered that the last time she saw a giant spider. And then she looked at the top and thought that there were so many cobwebs under the ceiling that even the curtains looked like they were woven from cobwebs. And she thinks about the fact that this won't work, and she needs to clean this ceiling today. After some time, the girl finished cleaning and said that she was dead tired. But when Charlize climbed onto the ladder, she thought it was old and wobbly, and she somehow felt uneasy. At this time, the girl thought that something might go wrong. The main character took a broom and thought that there would be no cobwebs now. She reflects on the fact that people are so cruel, and she does not understand why the maids do not come to clean the prince's house. Charlize understands that as much as she doesn't want to do this is the crown prince's maker and it needs to be cleaned up. But suddenly, the girl falls down the stairs. And at that time, she thought that if she hit herself hard, the Empress would find out and forbid her to come here. But suddenly the prince runs up to her and asks if she is okay. Seeing him, the girl asks how His Highness ended up here. However, he replies that it doesn't matter and asks if she was serious about taking the old ladder from the warehouse. And the girl says that she did it, and the prince does not understand how she could lift such a heavy ladder, and moreover, it was about to be broken. At this time, Charlize asks for forgiveness, and the prince asks what she is apologizing for. The main character explains that she almost caused him serious problems. And at that time, I thought that if the Empress found out that she came here, she would get it not only for her, but also for him. The girl apologizes again and says that His Highness can scold her. This prince heard and asked what she was talking about, and then he tells her to forget about it. Charlize looked at the prince and asked if he was angry. Hearing this, the guy asks what she has in mind, and then he says that if she gets hurt, it will be bad for him, and he asks if that's why she thinks he's angry. Having heard this, the girl assures that this is not so. And then Diamond explains that he is the only good person he has met in this palace over the past 5 years. And then he says what if she gets hurt and asks if he shouldn't worry. The prince says that when they first met, she was scared because he threatened her with a knife, and then asks if it's true. The girl explains that this is not at all true, and to be honest, she was a little scared at first, and at that time I thought that he would really kill her. And he says that, however, this is not the case now. Charlize touches the prince and says that if it still makes him uncomfortable, then he can just say that he's got her. Hearing this, the prince agrees with her and says that next time she did not think that he would be angry with her. The main character often began to disappear, and this was noticed by the maid, who decided to follow her. The maid tells the empress that she was informed that Charlize visits the crown prince every day in his castle. The little girl turns to the mistress and says that she has brought the laundry to be washed. Seeing this, the maid says that the basket is heavy and thanks the girl. Charlize asks her if she needs to eat or do anything. The maid says that there is no more work for her and says that it is already lunchtime and invites the girl to go eat. Seeing that the girl does not go towards the kitchen, the maid asks if she will have lunch. However, Charlize replies that she will take the laundry to the laundry and join them right away. The empress looked at the maid and said that her attitude towards work was extremely sincere, and therefore she would give her a bonus next month. And then she says that she is not talking about the fact that the maid treats Charlize well and offers to understand her correctly. Her Highness announces that she has to go, and at this time the maid does not understand what is happening. At this time, the empress was watching the girl, who at that time was busy with mischief, so that she could take more from the food. Rose spies on Charlize, and at this time, she thinks that she is so cute when she holds the basket. However, she understands that no matter how cute she is, it is very dangerous for her to go to the crown prince's castle. Towards evening, Charlize turns to His Highness and informs him that she will come tomorrow, and he tells her to be careful. When the girl climbed through the hole, she thought that it was very difficult, but suddenly she saw the empress in front of her and was very surprised. She didn't understand how she ended up here. The mistress invites her not to make noise and to follow her quietly. However, at this time the girl does not understand what to do, because it seems that the empress is disappointed in her. The girl reflects on the fact that this was done to protect the empress, but she cannot even explain her motives to her. Suddenly, the girl heard the prince calling her and asking if Her Highness the Empress was outside. Rose stood near the wall and asked if he was truly the crown prince, and then she says that it seems to her that this is the first time they are talking to him. Diamond replies that it is, and at that time I thought that the Empress would punish Charlie. The prince turns to Your Highness and says that he knows she is embarrassed to talk to him. However, he wants to talk to her at least like this. Then the guy asks not to punish Charlize, and she explains that she said that she was forbidden to come here countless times. Diamond reports that he forced her to come here with threats. Hearing this, the girl objects and says that this is not true at all. But at this time, the prince tells her not to interfere, and then he turns to Her Majesty and says that if she wants, they will never meet again. Hearing this, Charlize doesn't understand why he said that. The young master asks the Empress to forgive Charlize. Rose says that she will consider what he said to His Highness, the Crown Prince, and then he invites the girl to go. When they arrived at the castle, the Empress asks Charlize why she went to see the Crown Prince. The main character says that he looked unhappy, and she reports that she cannot compare his life and the life of just a maid. But she thought that their situations were similar, and therefore asks for forgiveness from the lady. Rose agrees with the girl and says that it is her mistake. And then he says that no matter what the situation, no one dared to violate the ban on visiting the Crown Prince. The Empress reports that she has no choice but to punish her Charlie. The main character agrees with her and says that she will accept any punishment she chooses. And at that time she thought that the Empress hated her. The girl understands that Rose treated her so well and she disappointed her so much. However, if she gives a reason, it will be even more strange. The Empress reports that her punishment is that she will periodically visit the prince. Her Majesty says that she always thought that the Emperor was too cruel to the Crown Prince, and he asks if it's bad for her to treat him more gently, at least. At this time, the main character thought about what she was allowing and was very surprised by this. Rosa offers to go to him freely from now on without hiding, and then asks the girl if this is good. And she says no matter what anyone says, she has permission to do it. Surprised, Charlize asks if the Imperial Majesty gets angry. However, the Empress assures her that she will deal with this, and she shouldn't pay attention to this when she's little. Rose strokes the girl's head and says that she values her very much. At this time, the girl thought that she was the cause of this problem. Her Majesty says that this does not affect the decision she makes, and she, as the Empress of this country and an adult, says that he is the son of the Emperor, who inherited the family name Karpel, and it is her duty to protect the Crown Prince. The main character understands that the words of the Empress, who is so careful that she does not feel remorse. However, you can't tell from the outside because the Rose is very worried about Diamond. Her Majesty says that there is one more thing that Charlie should know, and that's what she needs to stop doubting herself. Rose has descended to the level of a girl and says that she is the Empress's favorite maid, and she needs to be more confident. And then he says that she underestimates herself and underestimates her care. Hearing this, the girl began to cry, and Rose asks why she is crying. However, the girl thanks her and then says that she has let her down so much and she can be angry, and asks her not to leave her. The Empress turns to the girl and asks that she was worried about this all the time. She wipes her tears and asks Charlize to look at her. And then he says that she will never leave her, and therefore the girl should not worry. The Empress calms the girl and says that everything is fine, and then hugs her. At this time, the girl felt the warmth of her heart and hands. The maid asks the Empress if she is okay. Rose replies that she knew, but suggests that the Emperor would not particularly like this news. However, Rose does not understand how it was possible not to guess anything from the expression on her face. The Empress reports that today she heard the Crown Prince's voice for the first time, and this voice that did not answer her for 8 years. The child, who all his life could not receive protection from anyone, decided to protect Charlie. Rose realizes that she has become an adult and has turned away from him, and besides, she is one of those who took his place. Hearing this, the maid suggests that the mistress not speak like that again. When His Highness the Emperor passed away, the barely 3-year-old prince was imprisoned and took his rightful place on the throne by the deceased's younger brother, the Marquis of Maid. The lady understands that her father, the Duke of Rochester, took the most active role in this entire process. But the father was devoted to the Emperor, and when he died, the brother, who had achieved success, ceased to show respect and devotion to the throne. However, the Dukes of Rochester are still one of the most influential families of the aristocracy, and the Emperor still needs their strength. The Empress says that in any case she will take care of the prince. After all, there was no one left except her who could restore ties between the throne and the Rochester family. Rose says that His Highness the Emperor will never harm her. At this time, Prince Sidia Wisłam-Zamka wonders if everything will be fine with Charlize. And then Diamond looked at the food he had left. And at that time, he remembered the girl who offered him to sit down with the goodies that she brought him. Suddenly, he heard the voice of a girl and thought that it could be Charlie. And then he thinks about what he heard and thought that something was wrong with him. After all, he always thought that he would be alone for the rest of his life. Walking through the castle, the guy remembers that Charlie almost fell down the stairs and got hurt. Diamond reflects on the fact that there are now many places in the castle where they dined together and talked for a long time. And he understands that wherever he goes, the ghosts of the past appear Charlize. The prince comes to the wall where there was a hole through which the girl climbed, and says that he doesn't want her to suffer because of him, and at this time he does not want her to forget him. His Majesty reflects that he does not want to return to this loneliness. But suddenly the prince hears that Charlize is addressing him, and when he saw her he was surprised. And at that time, he thought that now mirages would also appear to him. The girl reports that he is not imagining things and assures him of this, and then asks His Highness if he is glad to see her. Charlize says that she missed him, and the prince asks if it's really her. And the girl replies that it is true. Diamond approaches the girl and takes her hands and asks if this is a dream. And at that time he thought that she was a girl who, for the first time in his life, bestowed warmth, and she came to him again. Sitting under a tree, the girl asks His Highness if he slept at all that night, and he says that he has some circles under his eyes and his lips are cracking. Charlize is worried about the prince getting sick and asks him about it. However, the guy assures her that this is not the case. And then he turns to the girl and says that all this is not important at all. Diamond says what's more important is that she's safe, and then he asks if she sneaked in here. Charlize explains that the Empress personally ordered her to visit him. Hearing this, the prince was surprised. The girl explains that at first she looked at her angrily, and then it turned out that she was mistaken. And the little lady says that everything is fine now anyway. The prince says that since Her Majesty the Empress said so, then so be it. Diamond looks at the girl and says that her eyes are swollen, and at that time she thought that he should not lie to her because nothing was swollen. The guy says that she really looked like an owl with them and called her Owl Roar. This girl heard screaming, asking His Highness what kind of rudeness. And then she says that she thought that he would be at least a little worried, and he laughs at her. At this time, the prince began to laugh, and the girl asks why he is crying. And then he smiles too and says, "Who would say that she is roaring? After all, he himself is an ugly person sparrow." The prince assures her that he did not cry, and the girl calms him down, says that she believes him. However, he assures the lady that if she continues to tease him, he will get angry. Diamond says that he is so glad that they were able to meet again. Charlize turns to the prince and says that he looked that the head maid has prepared a lot of goodies today, and then he says that there is even his favorite meat here. Suddenly the girl noticed that the prince was very strict and asked if maybe she had done something wrong. However, the guy assures her that this is not the case. Diamond turns to the lady and says that she always takes care of him, it seems no. After all, she constantly asks only about his tastes and doesn't talk about herself at all. His Majesty announces that today he will take care of her. When she hears this, girl is surprised and asks what he is talking about, and at this time she wants to take away his food. The prince invites the girl to calm down and asks what she likes more, vegetables or meat. She replies that there will be meat. The guy says that he understands, but first she must eat vegetables. And then the prince invites the girl to open her mouth and say, However, the girl assures her that she will eat herself. But he claims to take care of her and fed her at that time. Diamond turns to Charlie and says that her meters are about to burst because she filled them to capacity. And the lady answers that it's his fault. At this time, the main character looked at him and did not understand why the prince was smiling. His Majesty says that she is very similar to a squirrel. And at this time, the girl thought that now she was not even a person. The prince claims that she ate vegetables and invites her to eat meat. The girl thought that it was strange because she didn't understand why he treated her like a child all day. Charlize talks about how His Highness feeds her, but he doesn't eat. However, the guy assures her that he will eat himself and tells her not to worry. At this time, the girl thought that even if he said this, but considering the fact that she is his servant, it is so awkward. Suddenly, the Empress comes to them and asks what is happening here, and he says that in addition to Charlie's order to visit the prince, but there was no permission to feed him. Seeing the Empress, the girl does not understand what she is doing here, and at that time she thought that she had let her down again. Rose reports that she has never fed Charlie this way. The prince explains that he recently fed the girl pudding, and at this time the main character does not understand why the Empress was so angry and what she was doing. The lady turns to His Highness and asks how many times he fed Charlie. This guy heard and asks what she means. Rose explains that she and Charlie are so close that they sleep under the same blanket and in the same bed. The guys were surprised when they heard this. And at this time, the main character reflects on the fact that this never happened. The Empress says that tonight, too, Charlie was going to sleep with her, and then he shows how she hugs her in her sleep and says that they sleep sweetly together. Diamond asks the Empress if she came all the way here to share this truth. The lady replies that she thinks this is the absolute truth, and then asks if it is not so difficult to be sure. At this time, the main character does not understand what is happening between these two. But suddenly, the maid Hayden comes to them and greets Her Highness, the Empress and His Highness the Crown Prince. At this time, the young master didn't even think that a maid from the Empress's palace would show up at his castle. The maid reports that His Highness the Emperor has come to visit her. At this time, the main character thought that it was all because of her. Rose asks how long ago he arrived, and the maid responds that he has just arrived and is waiting for her in the palace. The Empress says that usually he doesn't care, but apparently he didn't like her meeting with the prince. And then he turns to the girl and invites her not to linger and informs her that she is leaving. Surprised, Charlize asks Her Highness if she shouldn't come with her. The Empress tells the girl that she should not worry about this and assures that the adults will sort everything out. Diamond turns to Her Highness and asks for forgiveness. Rose asks what he is apologizing for. The prince reports that because of him, His Highness the Emperor is angry and she will accept the consequences of this anger. However, the Empress assures him that this is not true and says that he has nothing to apologize for. And then she says that she is the Empress and she has a responsibility to take care of them. And she says that she is only doing her duty and they should not feel guilty about it. Rose invites the prince not to detain Charlize and then leaves. The main character looked at the prince and asked what was wrong with him, and he replies that he seems to know why she likes the Empress. At this time, the girl thought that she was pleased to know that the Empress was treating the prince well. But still, the Emperor came for a visit, and she wonders if everything will be all right. The Emperor says that the tea is wonderful and asks the lady if she thinks so. Rose turns to His Highness and says that he must be very busy with official affairs, but still claims that she is glad to see him. Maud says that no matter how busy he is her fiancé, and therefore is obliged to visit her. And then he claims that this is not all, and reports that he has heard one interesting rumor. The Emperor asks the lady if she has found something extremely interesting to do, and asks if this is not so. And then he claims that he is talking about her visits to the Crown Prince, formerly the Marquis of Maud, who has now become Emperor Vincent de Windsor. The man who sees in Lady Eloise is only a link connecting with the Rochesters. He clings only to imperial power. The Emperor says that he does not want to interfere in the affairs of the Empress, and says that there are conversations going on here and there. And at this time, Rose thought that he should not know that the reason for her patronage over the Crown Prince was Charlie. And then he says that everything is for the sake of His Majesty the Emperor. The lady with red hair understands that everything can change if the Emperor thinks that his power is in danger. Her Majesty says that the Imperial Majesty does not care about the Crown Prince. The Emperor asks if that is why she decided to reprimand him. However, the lady assures her that this is not true, and at that time, I thought that this was just preparation for future consequences. His Majesty reports that she is very worried, and he says that he is just a child, and even if he does not protest. The Empress says that he will not always be a child, and he explains that childhood grievances remain in a person's memory for a long time. The Empress says that for the sake of His Majesty, she must show kindness to him. However, the Emperor argues that even if this is the case, and asks if she is obliged to visit him in person. Rose reports that the Crown Prince's self-esteem will not suffer if he is visited by an equal in status, and what will happen if he grows up with a resentment in his soul towards His Majesty. She wonders if the issue of succession to the throne will then become too troublesome. The Empress claims that this is why it is necessary to prepare him now, and at that time I thought that this worried the Emperor most of all. After all, it is a possibility that an adult crown prince will demand the return of the throne in the future. His Majesty says that there is meaning in her speeches, and then he says that he will trust her and her decision to take care of the crown prince. Hearing this, the Empress says that she is eternally grateful for his trust. The Emperor announces that he has important business to attend to, and so he must go. Hearing this, the lady thought that the whole palace knew that he had dumped all his work on the ministers, and she did not understand how he had the courage to lie. Walking along the corridor, the main character saw the Emperor, and then said that she was Charlize, the maid of the Empress's palace, and she was greeting His Majesty, the Emperor. However, the operator passed by without even looking at the girl, and she thought that he looked exactly as he was described, a good-natured face and cunning intentions. But still she is more worried about Rose, and she hopes that everything is fine with her. Charlize comes to the Empress, and when she saw her, the lady was surprised why she returned so early and asks her about it. Rosa invites the girl to come in quickly and sit down. The main character is not interested in the conversation because of her, and the Empress assures her that she is mistaken, and she says that she was still worried about the fact that the Crown Prince was completely alone. However, she understands that everything is more than good. The young mistress turns to the girl and says that what she doesn't like most is that she blames herself, and therefore he suggests not to talk like that anymore and to ask if this is understandable. Rose invites the girl to try her favorite desserts, which were specially prepared for her. At this time, the maid knocks on the door and says that it is Hayden, and when the mistress invited her to come in, she says that she brought tea, which she talked about with Miss Weber. The Empress thanks the maid for preparing it so quickly, however. She reports that she cannot drink it now. Rose reports that the aroma of this tea may be harmful for little Charlie, and therefore she suggests rescheduling it a little later. The maid says that she will bring tea that they can drink with Charlize. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and asked why they didn't drink that tea. The Empress replies that it is too bitter for her to drink. At this time, the main character still did not know, because in order to prevent the Empress from having children from that very day, she began drinking contraceptive tea. Charlize turns to Her Highness and asks if she is okay. However, the Empress turns to the girl and asks if she is still worried about her, and the girl answers that it is so. The lady with red hair invites the girl to sleep together today because that way she can take care of her, and invites her to come to her bedroom at 8 in the evening. When the girl heard this, she was happy and agreed. When the main character came to Rose, the Empress invited her PTO come and sit next to her. Charlize addresses Her Highness. However, the lady objects and tells her to just address her as Rose. At this time, the girl thought that there was a time when she called her sister Rose, and it somehow seemed strange to her to address the Empress as sister. The lady with the red hair talks about how she just wishes she could call her little sister Rose. Hearing this, the girl agrees with her. At this time, the main character thought that she, however, had nothing to do, and this was all because she was already crazy about her face. Charlize turns to her sister Rose, who is the Empress, and says that she is just a maid, and she doesn't understand how it is that the Empress and the maid will sleep in the same bed. The lady with red hair asks Charlie if her manners are more important than her, and she says that if she weren't around today, she wouldn't be able to sleep. The Empress says that she does not manage to sleep every night and invites them to sleep together. When the main character heard this, she thought that she might be punished for violating etiquette, but little sister Rose is so sweet, and therefore she cannot refuse her. Charlize talks about how His Highness the Emperor came to her palace and then asks if they should sleep together. Rose replies that they live in different castles anyway. Sleeping in the same bed only brings new inconveniences, and she doesn't understand what the point is in this guy. At this time, the girl remembered the memories described by the Empress from the book that she loved the Emperor more than anyone else in the world. However, the Emperor saw in it only a mechanism of power, and his gaze was never directed at the Empress. The more the Emperor spent time with other girls, the faster the pure and tender love of the Empress changed, and then she turned into greed and jealousy, reaching the point that she was ready to kill anyone who came close to the Emperor. The girl remembers that this is exactly what was said in the book, and now she understands that the difference between the book and reality is simply huge. Rose strokes the girl's face and says that she likes her much more than the Emperor, and then asks what her task is today. Charlize replies that she must take care of Her Highness, but immediately straightens herself and says that it is about her sister Rose. The lady with red hair says that she said everything correctly and asks her confidant if she knows that she has problems sleeping. The girl says that she heard that she used to take medicinal tea before bed. The Empress says that she still accepts him but thinks about it. Thanks to her, I'll fall asleep today anyway. And then she says that Charlie will sleep with her, and this will help her sleep very well. At this time, the main character thought that she knew how to persuade, and he understands that apparently, now it will be so. And then I looked at the lady and thought about how she could be so beautiful. Rose covers the girl with a blanket and says that she doesn't think she'll get much sleep today, and maybe she's worrying for nothing, but she won't be able to get enough sleep. Charlize turns to this wall of Rose and assert that if there is something that she should do, then let her tell her. However, the Empress objects and says this time she will take care of her. This girl was very surprised when she heard this. Rose says that when you can't sleep at all, you can drink a mug of warm milk, and she knows that she likes sweets, so she will say to add a spoonful of honey. Charlize turns to her sister and says that she is always so grateful to her, and the lady replies that she is also grateful to her for everything. And at that time I thought that if she weren't around, She would be incredibly lonely in this huge castle. The next day, the main character reflects on the fact that this summer is especially hot, and she sees that the Crown Prince's palace is so clean and good. After the Empress declared her desire to personally take care of the heir, the Crown Prince's palace began to look like a place where people actually lived. However, the main character does not understand why the prince is not visible, and in fact he would usually meet her. The girl entered the castle, but however she did not meet the prince and then began to look for him. When she searched everything, she thought that there was only one place left where he could be. Charlize understands that you cannot enter the Crown Prince's bedroom without permission, but because Diamanda is nowhere to be found, she can't do anything, and she is left with only one place where she has not yet looked for him. The girl knocks on the door to the prince's room and says that she has arrived. And, at that time, she thought that it was rude, but she understands that it cannot be otherwise. And then he announces that she is coming. The main character goes to His Majesty's bed and calls him, but does not hear an answer. Suddenly, Diamond gets up from the bed and points his sword at the girl and then asks who she is. The main character answers that she is Charlie. Seeing her, the prince asks if he hurt her and then asks for forgiveness and says that he did not recognize her. At this time, the girl thought that he was sleeping with a sword, and she understands that this is probably because of the Emperor. Charlize turns to His Majesty and says that he was sleeping all this time, and the guy replies that he fell apart somehow. However, the girl doesn't understand why and asks about it and says that he usually gets up early. The prince explains that he just had a nightmare, and the girl wonders how scary he was. However, the guy assures her that there is nothing worth talking about. And then the main character says that the room is very dark and suggests opening the curtains, and he says that after this, the mood will immediately skyrocket. When the light appeared in the room, the girl looked at His Majesty and screamed that he was very pale. However, the guy explains that the nightmare simply tormented him, and so he tells the girl not to worry. Hearing this, Charlize screams and asks how she cannot worry about him, and the guy thanks her for being worried, but assures her that he's really fine. The main character looked at him and thought that this was not true, and then he says that in that case, Your Highness should go to lunch. The prince replies that he is not hungry. However, the girl assures him that he definitely needs to eat, and then he offers to wait a little and says that she will bring everything. The prince invites the girl to wait and says that they will go together, but when he took a step, he immediately fell. Surprised, Charlize asks if His Majesty is okay. Well, when she touched him, she thought that he was all on fire, and then she put him in bed and ponders what she should do. The girl understands that she urgently needs to call a doctor, and at this time, she thinks that the Emperor is probably busy. Diamond turns to the girl and asks her not to tell anyone that he feels bad, and at this time the main character thought that she couldn't leave him like that. After all, she must take care of the Crown Prince. The sick prince remembers that his father lay in bed and asked forgiveness for leaving him so young alone. And then he says that he did not forget one thing, that he was named after Carpal, the founder of the state and the owner of God's power, Aurelius. The father tells the prince that he is the only crown prince of the empire and invites him to beware of his uncle and all the nobility, and then falls into eternal sleep. At this time, the grandmother tried to take her son away from his father, but suddenly their uncle came into their room. The grandmother, screaming, asks the courtiers what is going on here, but her uncle snatches the little boy from her arms, and she turns to him to let her grandson go. The aristocrat suggests that the mother not move so as not to harm her granddaughter, and then he says that if the others also want to save their lives, then he advises them all to stay in their places. The uncle throws the boy to the floor and then reports that he is not addressing him correctly. And then he says that from now on he should call him Highness the Emperor. And he says that today a new sun has shone for Windsor, and therefore now only Diamand will not be bored. From that day on, life that was full of loneliness and despair continued, and as the Emperor said, he definitely wasn't bored. And so the prince was haunted by fear due to the fact that he possessed the power of a god. The Emperor could not simply throw him in prison or kill him. However, the guy did not know that he was struggling to survive. Diamond. Although not entirely confident, he was able to use the power of God. After all, one day he realized something, and when the mercenaries, one after another, broke into his palace, Then all this time the emperor did not send them so that they would finish him off, but in order to show that his life belongs entirely to him. The prince reflects on the fact that at that moment he was only 5 years old, and suddenly the destroyed palace seemed huge to him, and the realization that no one cared about him hit him instantly. And he does not understand because in this case, whether all his suffering for the sake of such a life made sense. His Majesty understood that there was no one who would wait for him and who would love him. The prince was not afraid to die, but he was scared to realize that even if he died, no one would mourn him. After all, he only wanted to hear warm words and be loved. Day after day, Diamond consoled himself with the stupid dream that someone would lend him a helping hand. At this time, the main character asks His Highness if he can hear her. But when the prince saw the girl, he asked why she was crying. The main character explains that he was just constantly delusional and didn't feel well. The prince asks the girl if she is crying for him, and she replies that, of course. At this time, he thought that she was always on his side. The girl reports that she was so afraid that this time he would not wake up, and at this time, the prince thought that Charlie was the one who really cared about him. Charlie takes the prince by the hand and invites him to get well soon. The prince looks at the girl and says that she has such a funny expression on her face. But upon hearing this, girl screams and he explains that he is joking. At this time, the main character thought that since he jokes and smiles, it means he really is better. The guy says that he will try to get up. However, the girl assures that His Highness is better off in bed. Well, when I touched his handkerchief, I thought that it was very hot, and that meant the temperature had just risen. Diamond turns to the girl and says that he feels a little better. However, the girl claims that this is not at all true, and therefore he cannot remain like this, and he should call a doctor. But the prince reports that he is fine, and then he reminds her that he told her to keep his illness a secret. However, the main character claims that he needs to be treated if he feels so bad, and then, screaming, she asks why he keeps saying that everything is fine. Charlie reports that she is not a doctor and cannot really help. Diamond asks why she says she won't be able to do anything, and he claims that she is always next to him, and therefore this is the greatest help for him. The girl looked at His Highness and said that he was in so much pain, and therefore, maybe he could tell her the reason. The prince says that it is strange, but what he is suffering from is called God's fever, and therefore the body is weakened to such an extent that the soul suffers. He says that the power of the god Aurelius is that power that the human body cannot bear. And then he says that you can't tell anyone about this. The young master explains that this is why he has been getting sick sometimes for about 3 years now. However, he doesn't understand why there are so many, he tells her. Hearing this girl asks if she had come earlier. She could have helped him get better faster. However, he assures her that this is not her fault. At this time, Charlie thought that it was her fault, and if she had only found out about the prince's condition earlier, this would not have happened. And the main character turns to His Highness and asks if she can tell the Empress about his illness. Charlize reflects on what she knows why Diamond should be worried about, and if His Majesty finds out that the cause of the disease is the power of the god Aurelius, then the prince's life will be at even greater risk. Charlize turns to the prince and assures him that Her Majesty can be trusted, and if he is so worried, then she can say that it is just a cold. At this time, the young master thought that because of her, he also wanted to trust the Empress, and then he agrees with her and says that he will do so. The main character says that she will report to Her Majesty and return immediately, and he invites the prince to wait a little and says that she will return quickly. She also wishes him to have a good rest. Diamond. While in his room, one thought that this time the body hurt less than usual, and this may be due to the fact that Charlie is nearby. On the way to the Empress's palace, the main character thought that she was a fool and didn't understand why she didn't immediately realize that it was God's fever. The main character should have guessed right away. After all, the divine power that meets resistance when it appears, and the fact that the prince suffers alone because of this. The girl understands that she should be a little more attentive. But lost in her thoughts, she did not see the step and fell. The girl's blow hurt, but she thought that she didn't have time, and she had to run straight to the Empress. Suddenly, Charlize heard the Empress's voice asking her what she was doing here. Rose saw that the girl had fallen and asked if she was hurt. However, the girl replies that the crown prince is very ill, and say that he has a high temperature and is breathing heavily. The Empress suggests that the girl first calm down and says that they will immediately send a doctor to him, and then he asks again if she got hurt because she didn't hear the answer. Charlize asks her if she will send a doctor to the Crown Prince. The lady with red hair claims that she is the Empress of Windsor, and therefore, it is her duty to help the ailing Crown Prince. And so he tells the girl not to worry. When the doctor examined the young gentleman, he reported that the days were now painfully hot, and according to this principle, he felt worse. And then he says that he prescribed the medicine for him and offers the principle of getting better. The main character thanked the doctor and he advised her not to worry. Charlize looked at Diamond and saw that her skin color had become much better, so she felt relieved. And at that time I thought, if you look at it this way, he looks very young and he is handsome even in his sleep. I heard that the prince was recovering. The main character thought that now she didn't have to worry and could rest a little, and at this time, she felt very tired and wanted to sleep. The girl lay down next to the prince and thought that she couldn't sleep, but she was so tired that she fell asleep in a minute. After a while, Diamond woke up and he doesn't understand how long he slept, and then he looked at his hands and thought that his body hardly hurt, and this means that enough time has passed. But when the prince saw the girl next to him, Topa thought that she was next to him again. The young master touched the girl's hair and thought that she was much younger than him. And then he asked her forgiveness for constantly making her suffer. At this time, the girl felt his hand and woke up from this. And then he turns to His Highness and, screaming, asks if he is awake and how he feels. The young master replies that thanks to her, he feels much better, and so he thanks the girl, and then asks if she was very worried. Charlize says, of course. After all, he felt bad for a long time, and then asks how much he thought she was worried. The girl reports that she must protect His Highness and rest until he gets better. She absolutely cannot. Diamond looks at the girl and then says that she has drool in the corner of her mouth. I heard her ask if he was serious, but the prince replies that he is joking. However, the lady was offended, and seeing her upset, he apologizes. However, the main character says that she will think, and therefore will not talk to him for now, and he asks if she's angry and then asks her to look at him. The girl explains that she said she wasn't talking to him, and then the prince says that it's like the crows have built a nest on her head and it's so funny. Charlize heard this and looked in the mirror. When I saw myself, I screamed, "What a horror!" And at that time I thought that the Empress and the doctor met her in this form. The prince invites the girl to come up to him and informs him that he will help fix everything. However, she disagrees and says that she can do it herself. Diamond assures the girl that he wants to help her, and then he takes a comb and combs her hair. When the young master touched her hair, he thought that she had very soft feathers and that the chicks probably had the same soft feathers. The prince asks the girl if she knows a story about a deity named Aurelia. Charlize replies that she of course knows and says that it is a divine beast that helped the Carpal Emperor, the founder of the Windsor Empire, banish all demons and found an empire. Diamond replies that she was right, and then says that according to legend, the squaller had fur as silver as her hair, and he doesn't understand how this is possible. And then he asks the girl why she looks like that. The main character explains that she is a chipmunk, and this is a deity, and then asks why His Highness constantly compares her to animals. And she says that she can do a lot of things and is good at a lot of things. Having heard this principle, she sews with whom she can then be compared so that she likes it. She explains that she is with the most beautiful and wonderful person in their world, Her Majesty the Empress. However, the young master does not understand why she is talking about the Empress again. The girl explains that she is so beautiful and not only beautiful, but also sings well, and besides, she is the kindest in the whole world. The prince thought that Charlie really loves the Empress, and even when she spends time with him, she still thinks about Her Majesty, and he realizes that he is too young for her. The girl asks the prince if he has ever braided his hair, and then she says that she will do it herself. However, he assures her that he wants to try it himself. Charlize claims that if he braids her hair now, she won't even be able to untangle it in her old age. Hearing this prince asks if she can braid them herself, and the girl replies that she always does this, since she has been working as a maid for almost 5 years. Diamond offered the girl a ribbon so that she could float it into her braid. Seeing this ribbon, the main character said that it was very beautiful, and at that time I thought that the quality is so good, but it seems quite old. The prince says that this ribbon belongs to his late mother. Hearing this, the main character was surprised and reported that she could not use such valuable speech. However, the young master objects and says that she suffered so much hardship because of him, and it was quite tiring, and simply invites her to take her. Charlize invites him not to talk like that, and then asks if he were caring for her sick, it would tire him. Damon replies that, of course, it would not tire him, and the girl says that she wasn't tired of it either, and then he says that they are similar to him and takes his hand. Charlize braids the ribbon into her braid and says that His Highness is a very important person for her, and as important as this ribbon is important for him. And therefore, in the future, she suggests that you don't even dare think that because of her, she is somehow tired. When the girl has braided her hair, she asks the prince if he likes it. The guy replies that it's beautiful and claims that it suits her. The main character looks at the prince and says that this time she will forgive him because he is sick, and then asks when he gets better what he wants to eat. The prince thought for a while and reports that he really liked the milk pudding that she brought. Hearing this, the girl says that it's just a snack and claims that she needs something else. Suddenly they heard a knock on the door and the prince asks who is there. The empress replies that it is she and then opens the door and enters. When Charlie saw the lady, she immediately ran up to her and they hugged. The lady with red hair says that she missed her very much, and the girl says that she missed her too. At this time, Diamond looked at them, and he doesn't understand why Charlize likes this empress so much. Rose touched the girl's hair and asks what is that cute ribbon in her hair. The main character replies that His Highness the Crown Prince gave it to her. The empress says that the Crown Prince is still a man, and he doesn't care about such details. And then he says that he can find a much nicer ribbon for her. Charlize addresses Her Highness and explains that the ribbon belonged to Her Highness the Crown Prince's mother. However, Rose invites the girl to listen to her to the end, and he says that the Crown Prince may not pay attention to the details, but the ribbon is really very sweet and beautiful. Hearing this, the main character was very happy, but suddenly Charlize remembers that the prince has not eaten anything today and announces that he will bring soup. And he says that the empress said that it was specially from her, and that's why she will bring it immediately. The prince says he shouldn't, but the girl doesn't pay attention to his words, and at that time he thought about how she could run away so quickly, and he thinks about the fact that he should thank the empress, but at the same time he feels awkward. After all, he doesn't understand how to even start a conversation with her. The empress turns to the prince and tells him not to worry too much, and she reports that she did not come here to harm him, and explains that she was worried about him and felt responsible. Rose says that she mentioned that the care and protection of the crown prince is the empress's responsibility, and the guy answers that he remembers. The lady says that she is here to fulfill her duties, and besides, Charlie spends so much time taking care of him, so she thought that she should help. Diamond looked at the lady with red hair and thought that she was annoyed, or so it seemed to him, but however, he agrees with her that Charlie really always takes such care of him. The empress turns to His Highness and says that she sees him in a good mood, and she would also like to thank him for having a good time with Charlize. The red-haired lady explains that she was worried that she would have to grow up too quickly, since she didn't have any friends her age. And spending time with him, she really looks like a child. And then he claims that he cares about the girl so much. Rose reports that this girl is her only joy. And at this time, the young gentleman thought that he had already managed to cause trouble for this bright man by taking care of Charlie. And he understands that if he had not existed, then everyone would have lived peacefully and happily, without opposing the will of the emperor. The prince ponders what ingratitude he should first of all bring to the empress, and then he turns to Her Majesty and asks for forgiveness, and he says that in fact he is well aware that he cannot please her. Hearing this, Rose asks what he is talking about. The prince says that he is also aware that he is so concerned as the current emperor about his weak legitimacy. However, in the event of his death, the question of succession to the throne will arise even more acute, and that's why such a depressing feeling appears because of the inability to finish him off. Diamond explains that it is only natural that she would come to take care of him, someone who is a thorn in the emperor's side. At this time, the empress realizes that the prince does not behave at all like a child, because he thinks, and in this he is strangely similar to Charlize, and she realizes that she may be in the same vulnerable position. The crown prince turns to Her Majesty and says that he is embarrassed to ask her about this, but the empress assures him not to worry about it and talks about it. The young master reports that the day will come when he will become strong enough, and for this, to protect his loved ones, and at this time, The Empress asks who he wants to protect. The prince replies that the one who, in the most difficult moments, and at this time remembers the girl Charlie, and talks about the one who extended his hand to him. The Empress turns to His Highness and informs him that he might have misunderstood something. And then she explains that she did not expect the title of Empress from the very beginning, and therefore does not feel any evil feelings towards him. Rose turns to the prince and says that she wanted to hear words of gratitude from him rather than an apology. And then she looked at him and said that now he looks better than before. Diamond thanks the lady and she says you're welcome. At this time, Charlize reports that she has already arrived. Seeing her, the Empress asks if she herself brought this hot dish. The main character says that everything is fine and she is used to it, and therefore suggests that she not worry. At this time, Diamond thought that it was true what Charlie said, the Empress is a very good person. When the prince went for a walk, he said that he was surprised, because usually he felt bad for 2 weeks. But here he recovered in 3 days, and that's why it seems strange to him. Charlize says it's good that he felt better so quickly, and the guy agrees with her and says that she said it correctly. The main character suggests that he not devote so much time to his illness, and then he says that she has to go and will return in the evening. When the girl came to the castle, she immediately came to the Empress's room and asked if she was looking for her. Rosa invites the girl to come in and tells her that she has something for her. Hearing this, the girl was surprised. The Empress shows her a soft toy and says that it is a chicken. Seeing him, the girl was very happy, took him in her arms and said that he was such a cutie. The lady with red hair smiled and asked if she liked the gift, and the girl replies that she is very, very, very. And this time I thought that this was a gift from the Empress, and so it didn't matter whether it was a chicken or a chicken. Rose asks if this is true, and then asks if she liked it better than the gift from the Crown Prince. And at this time, the main character does not understand what to do, because she likes both of them. But suddenly, the girl saw the hands of the Empress, and then, screaming, she asked what happened to her fingers. After all, she saw that they were all covered in scars. Her Majesty tells the girl not to worry and says that there's nothing wrong with her. After all, she got hurt while sewing. At this time, Charlize realized that the Empress herself sewed this chicken for her, and the lady with red hair says that she tried to please her. However, the girl does not understand and asks why she was so wounded. The Empress explains that the Crown Prince gave her his family heirloom and then asks if she should have sat empty-handed. Rose says that she should have put all her love into the gift and asks if that's true. And then he claims that this toy is very useful because you can sleep with it in your arms, and if she is angry, you can beat her properly. At this time, the main character looked at the toy and thought that the Empress herself had sewn this gift. And then she says that she really likes her and that she is the best, and then hugs the Empress. However, the lady with red hair objects and says that the best thing here is only Charlize. And at that time, the girl thought that she loved the Empress very much. In the evening, as promised, the girl ran to the prince, but took a new toy with her. Seeing her, the prince asks why she is so early. However, the girl shows him her chicken toy and asks him if he likes it. Diamond looks at the toy and reports that it doesn't particularly look like a chicken. However, the girl objects and says that it is very similar, because the Empress herself sewed it for her. Hearing this, the prince was surprised, and Charlize reports that this was the first time she had received such a gift. Hearing this, the prince asks what about the ribbon he gave her. At this time, the main character realizes that the prince's gift and the Empress's gift were made almost simultaneously, and so as not to offend any of them, she took off the ribbon and tied the toy. And then she showed it to the prince and asked if it was cute. Diamond claims that he gave this ribbon to her. However, the girl claims that if you combine 2 good things, you will get an even better thing, and then asks if he knows about such a thing. The next day, the main character turns to the maid Hayden and says that she is going to change the curtains and bed linen to summer ones, and then asks if she can get documents for this to submit to the administration of the Imperial Palace. The maid asks if she has already changed everything, and the girl replies that the Crown Prince's palace remains. Hearing this, Hayden says that she is very good, and therefore she will prepare all the documents. And at the same time, he invites the girl to go to the laundry and take the Crown Prince's winter curtains and bed linen there. And then the Empress's maid invites the girl to take some candy. The main character thanked her and said that she would return soon. Charlize understands that everyone cares about her, and therefore she must try harder. When the main character was going to the laundry, she saw a cat and thought that this was the same kitten that her mother had abandoned, and he was wandering around the imperial palace. And she understands that he has grown during this time. When the cat came closer to the girl, she stroked him, and she felt sad that she had nothing for him, not even any treat. Suddenly, the girl heard the maids talking about how this cat had grown up in the management of the imperial palace, and it seems to them that she's just wandering around here begging for food. And they also say that when the cat was little, it was cute, but when it grew up, it was no longer so. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was quite cute even now that she had grown up, and so next time she will definitely bring her something to eat. Charlize looked at the cat and thought that it would be good if she came for a walk near the Empress's palace, because then she could feed her at any time. The maid turns to the maid and asks if she thinks this is too much. And then he says that too much laundry is coming from the Crown Prince's palace. After all, that's why work slowed down due to the new maid assigned to the Crown Prince's palace. Hearing this, the main character thought about what they were saying about her, and then I saw Becky smiling and saying that in the maid's house she was very famous, and they said everyone around her was terribly annoying. However, the main character remembers that Becky hated doing laundry, and she doesn't understand what she's doing here. Maid Becky says she wasn't promoted to official maid because of this Charlize. Because of her, all of them were sent to the laundry room as training maids. After all, she was like this from the very beginning. Hearing this, the other maid says that everyone cared so much about her, she still behaved like this. And then he says that Her Majesty the Empress adores the girl, and that's why she turns up her nose and thinks that she's better than the rest. And they don't understand how long the Empress will take care of her. Becky claims that now the Empress is taking care of her like a baby, and when she grows up, everything will end. After all, she reflects on the fact that the Empress's love will soon melt away. At this time, the main character thought that the Empress was treating her well only because she was small. And she reflects on the fact that this may be true, and if so, then when she grows up, the Empress will abandon her. The maids say that the girl is very smart, and if you think carefully, everyone with whom this girl was not close suffered in one way or another. After all, she uses the love of the Empress to gain her own benefit, because they understand that this makes sense. Betty claims that she only learned bad things as a child. Hearing this, Charlize realizes that all this is not so. However, it does not matter what she says, because there will be no point, and they will not listen to her. The maid says that it will probably be difficult for them with the prince, who does not know exactly when he will be overthrown. And then she claims that this is precisely why she has been having so much fuss lately. Betty says the crown prince is not bad either. Although she has heard many rumors that an overthrow is about to happen, she does not understand whether this is necessary. And he says that he should be in a better mood at least once. The maid reports that she doesn't even know how rotten the boy is, and the other maid responds that this selfish idiot may not even know this. Charlize thought that she could endure insults directed at herself, but did not want to hear Diamond insult her. And after these words, the girl, screaming, asks if they have said everything, and then he says that he knows absolutely nothing. Betty, seeing the girl, says that it is Charlie, and then asks in surprise if they saw her eyes light up. At this time, the main character thought that maybe it was indeed her fault that she did not become an official maid, but this does not matter at all now. Charlize turns to the maids and asks what nonsense they were just saying about the crown prince. And then he claims since His Majesty the Emperor is the regent, His Highness the Crown Prince, this proves the legitimacy of the Crown Prince. The main character asks the maids if with these words they are not saying that they doubt the legitimacy of His Majesty the Emperor. And it seems to them that the Emperor's wrath is not scary. Betty is very angry and asks if she is threatening them now. The girl replies that it may be so, and she only told the truth. And then she says if her words sound like a threat and asks if they have anything to be ashamed of. An angry Betty screams for the girl to shut her mouth, and then raises her hand and wants to hit her. And at this time, the main character closed her eyes so as not to see this. But suddenly, a voice is heard that he has been watching for a long time, but does not see the end of it. And then the man claims that not only are they chatting about the authorities, but things have already come to the point of insulting the imperial family. Betty screams that she is in pain and offers to let her go. And the man says that if she asks so, and he lets go of her hand, and she falls to the ground. At this time, the maid does not understand how the aristocrat ended up here and asks about it. The man says that she so boldly talks nasty things about the imperial family, and the sight of an aristocrat immediately drives her into a stupor. Hearing this, the main character thought that his voice was so cold. But when I looked at the man, I thought that I was seeing him for the first time. However, for some reason he seems familiar to her. One of the maids says that this is Sir Rochester. And at this time, the main character remembered that this is the head of the aristocracy, who has gathered the sweetest cream of society, and he is the elder brother of the Empress herself. The head maid asks how he got here, and she is interested in whether the maid has done anything wrong in front of him. The aristocrat claims that this maid, along with others, laughed at His Highness, the Crown Prince, and Her Majesty the Empress. And this does not take into account the fact that this maid is informal, spoke to a representative of the aristocracy, and tried to use force. Rochester claims he can't just let it go, and therefore he will personally report this incident to Her Majesty, hoping for their understanding. The man then turns to the girl and asks if she is a maid of Her Majesty's palace. And when the girl replied that it was true, he invited her to follow him. At this time, the main character looked at Becky and thought that she would never see the palace again. Following the aristocrat, Charlize turns to his lordship and thanks him for his help. However, the man says that he did not help her and she is confused about something. Rochester explains that if a maid of the Empress's palace was humiliated by ordinary maids, then this hurts the authority of both him and his sister. Hearing this, the girl thought that the Empress's authority was hurt by her behavior. The aristocrat turns to the girl and asks that with her speed, will they have time to get to the Empress's palace? I heard this girl apologize and then walk faster. But no matter how fast Charlize walked, she still couldn't keep up with the man, because she understood that not all people have such long legs, and it's not even her fault. When the Empress saw her brother, she asked in surprise what brought him here. Rochester smiled and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. And at this time, the main character thought that she didn't even know that he could smile so brightly. The brother explains that he just came to check on her and hope he didn't distract Her Majesty from the meeting of the State Council. Rose replies that it's just a regular job. Hearing this, Rochester says that he thought he would like to look at her little face. Seeing the girl, the Empress asks how he met Charlie on the way. Hearing this, the brother looked at the girl and thought that now he understood what was going on. At this time, the main character does not understand why he stares at her all the time. The Empress asks the girl if she went to the laundry, and then he says that she's been running around like a top since the morning. Rose says that she would like to have tea with her brother and asks Charlie if she will prepare it. Hearing this, the girl agrees and quickly leaves, and at that time she thought that this was great, because this was a chance to show that aristocrat what she was capable of. After all, she understands that he kept looking down on her. Charlize thinks that she will prepare the best tea and sweets of his life, and therefore he will not be able to find fault with anything. The girl collected all this on a cart, and then, arriving at the office door, she heard a conversation about her. The main character stood at the door and listened to what Rochester said, that Charlize very fortunately coincided the time of her care with the reception of this little maid, and besides, with her help, it has become much easier to take care of the Crown Prince and ask if this is not so. The aristocrat reports that he thinks the problem is that she loves this little maid too much, and then he says what if he is wrong and invites her to convince him that this is not so. Rochester says that he, of course, understands that she is sweet and really a very sweet child, but that's enough. He just doesn't want to see her neglecting herself because of her. And she herself knows that His Highness the Crown Prince requires a lot of care, and there is so much fuss with him. The Empress replies that they have already dealt with this part, and even His Majesty agreed. However, her brother argues that she is in a position where she must accept other people's opinions. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was only an obstacle for the Empress because she was small and could not do anything. Rochester states that people may think that she has lost her mind because of this little maid. Hearing this, the main character thought that she couldn't screw up, and she didn't understand what to do. Hearing this, the Rose turns to her brother. However, he does not understand what is wrong and says that she cannot refute anything he said, and then he turns to the girl and asks her not to listen to what he says. At this time, Charlize thought that the words of the Empress's brother were true. The red-haired lady thanks the girl for bringing tea and sweets and then invites her to leave the cart and go rest. When the girl left the room, to thought that the Empress told her not to pay attention, but however, she could not do that. And even if he doesn't want to think about it, thoughts come into his head. Charlize remembers the maid's words, that she said that now the girl seems like a cutie to the Empress, but she doesn't understand whether the Empress will always cherish her this way. The main character reflects on the fact that she always wants to be close to the Empress, even when she stops being a child. Suddenly the girl heard a maid speaking to her and asking what happened, and then he says that she is calling her, but she still does not answer. Charlize replies that she was worried if she had anything else to clean up somewhere, and then she says that she will run because the cleaning is waiting. The maid asks if she has nothing better to do, and the girl replies that cleaning is the main task of the maid. The main character thought that if the Empress's love is just momentary sympathy, then even after this sympathy disappears, she still wants to be with her, and if so, then she should try even harder. The maid turns to Charlie and says that she has noticed that when she is very worried, she immediately starts cleaning, and then she says that she shouldn't overexert herself so much, even if she's worried, because she's just a child. Main character. She answers that someday she will also become an adult, and therefore she is preparing for this. Seeing the Empress, the girl says that she needs to go to the palace to see the crown prince. However, the maid does not understand why this is so. Suddenly, the girl ran away. At this time, the main character thought that even though it seemed that she was avoiding the Empress, she simply could not look her in the face now. And someday, when she grows up and becomes an adult, she will be able to earn the trust of the Empress without being just a little cutie. At this time, the maid greeted Her Majesty the Empress, and the lady asks where Charlie is. She just ran. The maid replies that she said that she urgently needed to go to the Crown Prince's palace. And at that time, Rose thought that maybe the girl was avoiding her, and the maid at this time reflects on the fact that they are both strange today. When the main character came to the palace to the Crown Prince, she thought that she needed to do something and decided to wash the windows. After all, she thought that work would distract her a little. Diamond, seeing the girl, asks if she has a goal today to clean the hole in the window. Charlize replies that everything here is dusty and she needs to clean it up. The prince ran his finger across the window and asked where there was even a speck of dust. She replies that it is clean here because she has already finished cleaning. The young master looked carefully at Charlize and asked what happened. However, the girl replies that everything is fine. However, he claims that he can see it, because something clearly happened. Diamond claims that he will listen to her, and therefore offers to tell her what happened. Charlize thought for a while, and then says that if His Highness likes someone for some reason, and then if the reason disappears, she asks what he will do. Hearing this, the prince asks what this strange question is, and the girl claims that he himself asked to speak. Diamond reports that if someone is near him for one single reason, then if this reason disappears, the relationship will then be sold, and asks if this is not so. The young gentleman looked at Charlie and claims that she is somehow too pale. However, the girl assures him that everything is fine and encourages him to continue. The prince says no, it doesn't matter now. However, the girl assures him that this is important to her. His Majesty says that he understands, and then asks if she thinks this assumption is a little strange. After all, friendships usually don't end for just one reason, because it still depends on the time she spends with the person, and asks if this is true. At this time, the main character thought that the prince was absolutely right. But here the situation concerns Her Majesty, the mother of the empire. And that's why it's hard to believe in love and trust people, being such an unattainable person. Charlize says that in any case, if she wants to be near her in such a situation, and she asks what is best for her to do. The young master says if she finds a new charm in herself that will make a person stay with her, then maybe it will work, and asks if it is true. The main character thought that she was right, because if she worked very hard, they would see her as a necessary person. Diamond thinks and turns to the girl and claims that these, of course, are just his thoughts, and asks whether such a relationship seems strange to her. After all, he doesn't understand how you can like a person just because of one trait. The prince asks when she likes someone if she has any conditions for this, and he is interested in whether he is not happy that this person is who he is. At this time, the Empress turns to Hayden and says that it seems to her that Charlie has been avoiding her for the last few days, and then asks if she knows why. However, the maid doesn't understand and asks if maybe something happened to her. The Empress explains that when she tries to talk to her, the girl immediately runs away, and she remembers that when she invited her to have a snack together, Charlie apologized and said that she didn't have time because she needed to clean up, and the next time she said that she needed to tidy up the garden, and the little fool completely forgot about it. Rose asks the maid how much work has accumulated in the palace. However, Hayden replies that everything is as usual, and the lady with red hair asks why Charlie is so busy. The maid replies that she doesn't even know, but she seems to be working tirelessly lately. The Empress suggests that maybe the new maids are bullying Charlize again, and Hayden says she'll make sure that doesn't happen. The Empress agrees with her, but still does not understand why the girl is avoiding her. And then she put her head on the table and said that she had no strength, and Charlie completely forgot about her. He saw the upset Empress and Hayden said that she could talk to the girl. Hearing this, the Empress objects and screams, saying that she will personally meet the girl and talk to her. Hearing this, the maid thought that this was a good idea, because it was better than her constant mood swings. Late at night, the main character could not sleep, because she was thinking about when she could stop avoiding the Empress. And then she looked at her toy and remembered that the Empress had injured herself while sewing Pippi. Suddenly, the Empress comes into her room and the surprised girl asks what happened. Rose turns to the girl and says that they need to talk, and this time I thought that I had not seen her in pajamas for a long time. Charlize apologizes and explains that she did not want to appear before Her Majesty like that. The Empress assures the girl that she does not need her apology because she just wants to talk. The lady with red hair asks Charlize if she's been avoiding her lately. The main character was surprised when she heard this. The Empress explains that when they find themselves in the same place, she immediately finds some urgent matter to escape. And the little girl says that's true and explains that she's just trying to work harder. Her Majesty asks the girl if anyone told her that she was lazy, and she replies that this did not happen. And lady then asks what's the matter and invites her not to tell her that she needs to work even more, and then they say that she's already doing a very good job. At this time, the main character gained determination and said that she would grow up someday. Hearing this, the Empress does not understand what she is talking about and asks about it. The girl explains that she is still small and maybe that's why she loves her. Hearing this, the Empress asks if she thinks that she loves her only because she is a child, and is therefore afraid that when she grows up, she will stop loving her and works hard to be useful. But without hearing an answer, Her Majesty thought that even on the day of the conversation with her brother, she was restless, but she did not pay due attention. Rose tells Charlie to imagine that she has a little sister, and then asks when she grows up and stops loving her. Hearing this, the little girl objects and tells her that this cannot be. The Empress says that she thinks so too, and that is why she sees her as a little sister. And when she grows up, even if she becomes an old granny, she will still love her. Rose tells the girl that she never said she loved her just because she was a child, and then she remembers that she originally promised her that she would never leave her, and she doesn't understand how anyone can think that this is a lie when she received her personal imperial word. Hearing this, Charlize apologizes, and the Empress says that she will forgive her, but first she must eat French sponge cookies called mandolins. Her Majesty explains that these mandolins contain magic that will make her forget all her sorrows and worries, and as soon as she eats them, all her sorrows will disappear. The girl ate some livers, and her lady asks if everything is okay, and she replies that everything is fine. At this time, the main character thought that it was because the Empress was next to her, or it was because the Empress said that she would always love her. But the girl understands that it has become much easier for her. The next day, when Charlize came to the Crown Prince, he saw her and asked why she was smiling so much. The girl replies that she is in a good mood, and then asks if he likes it when she walks around so happy. However, the prince objects and says that is not the case, and explains that she began to speak more clearly and therefore began to look a little more human. I heard this girl asking about something that before she didn't speak like a person. The Crown Prince explains that it seemed to him that she was acting younger than her age, or rather, she was acting like an adult. But he understands that now she behaves differently, and therefore it seems to him that the girl feels better than before. Hearing this girl asks if it is really noticeable. And at that time, I thought that I realized that the Empress would love her even when she grew up. And so this unconscious anxiety went away. The prince reports that this is not his thought about those people who like her, and therefore he thinks that they love her not because she is cute or small. Charlize turns to him and says that he hasn't told her yet that she's scary. However, the prince did not want to answer anything and said that he was going to drink water. The girl turns to His Highness and asks if he is avoiding because he folded the laundry poorly after washing. And at this time, the main character thought that maybe it was because Diamond was also still a child, but sometimes so funny. Returning to the castle, the girl saw a cat and asked what he was doing here. She also wondered if he was watching her. Charlize pulls out the food and screams that she kept her promise, and that's why she now always has a tasty treat on hand for him. The girl feeds the cat and says that he is a very cute and small kitten, and invites him not to lose this when he becomes an adult, and she had a good time with him. When Charlize was walking along the corridor, she saw an aristocrat and therefore stopped. At this time, Rogers asks her what she was staring at. The girl replies that no matter what, and at that time she thought when the Empress would come. Sitting in the room with Rochester, the girl thought that a few days ago she was non-stop looking for something to occupy herself with, but now she is so calm and she doesn't understand why. And he suggests that it may be because the obsession has passed. When the girl went out into the garden, she thought that all her work was finished for today, and therefore she could rest a little. But suddenly the Marquis turns to her and says that she came where she shouldn't, and asks why she is shaking so much. The girl replies that she was just a little scared, and at that time she thought that the Duke himself had appeared here. How could she not be scared by this? Rochester asks the girl where Her Majesty is. Charlize reports that she said she would go to another palace to meet the maids. After all, he wants to see how things are there once. The girl asks if His Highness wants to wait in the reception area, or she can tell him that he came, and at that time she thought about how quickly he would leave. Rochester announces that he will wait in the reception area, and the lady invites him in. Walking down the corridor together, the gentleman says that she began to speak more clearly, and at this time the girl thought that she had just recently completed her studies. Rochester claims that he didn't say this because he thought she was anything special, but that she simply spoke more clearly, that's all. When the main character heard this, she thought that it would be better if he didn't speak at all then, and she doesn't understand why he behaves this way. And even though he sees that there is nothing in her that is not capable of a child, but this time she will do everything perfectly, and therefore make him change his mind about her. The gentleman turns to the girl and says that he is very generous, and therefore, even if she screws up again, he will not be disappointed and tells her not to worry. However, Charlize replies that this will definitely not happen. The main character pours tea, and the gentleman says that she looks just like a real maid. And at that time, the girl thought that this was natural because she spent the most time at the academy, and she doesn't understand why the gentleman is so rude to her. Rochester asks the girl what she was looking at, and the little lady says no matter what. The aristocrat asks the girl if her legs hurt, and then invites her to sit on the sofa. However, the little lady thanks him and then objects and asks how she, a maid, can sit on the same sofa with the Duke. Rochester asks the girl if she wants to get rid of him silently, and then he invites her to think that if he stands there all the time, and Rose notices this, then when the lid returns to him, and then invites the girl to eat cookies. Charlize says these are the cookies she prepared for him, but the gentleman replies that he hates sweets. And then he says he wanted to tell her something. Rochester says that last time he was very cruel to her, but at this time the Empress comes into the room and addresses the girl and says that she missed her. Rose hugs the girl and says that she has been thinking about her all day, and at this time the brother thought that it might cost all three of them to have a tea party. The Empress asks the girl if her brother offended her. The little lady objects and says that everything was very good, and at that time she thought that instead he mentally exhausted her. And the little lady doesn't understand why the Empress is so cold towards the Duke, and he remembers that last time she greeted him so good-naturedly. Her Majesty turns to her brother and invites him to try to be at least a little softer towards Charlize. The main character heard this and thought about what it all meant because of her. Rochester says that he understands everything and will be more careful in the future, and then he says that he came here for a reason, and he reports that Margrave Ante has arrived in the capital of the empire. Antes, according to the myth of the founding of the empire, the founder of the empire, Carpal, received the help of the god Aurelius and drove demonic beasts to the very north of the empire into the land of severe cold. And to this day, he keeps the demon from penetrating the empire. Antes' family, the imperial family, supported the Antes family for many years, supplying huge supplies of food and bestowing the title of Margrave on Ser Antes, and in return, demanding the protection of the borders of the empire. And among the Antes, there is one person who has an extremely great influence on Diamand. At this time, Her Majesty asks why she, being the Empress, is only hearing this news now. Rochester responds because His Majesty the Emperor refused the Margrave's request for an audience. Hearing this, the Empress was surprised and said that the request for an audience from the Margrave guarding the border probably came for a reason, and she doesn't understand why the Emperor stopped all support for the North, and he assumes that this is why the Margrave personally came to ask for help. Rochester claims that the Emperor is not going to change his decision. After all, the Margrave is no longer able to keep everything under control, and at any moment he can give up the territory and resign. The lady with red hair says that the imperial family refuses to support the Antes family and reports that this is the first time she has heard about it. Berat suggests that she probably did all this in secret because he knew that she would be angry. Hearing this, the Empress screams that, of course, she will be angry because she does not understand how they can defend the northern borders without the help of the Antes clan. Rochester assures her that he tried to talk to him, but he is too stubborn, and given the circumstances, I realized that it was worth telling her. And then he says that the capital should at least arrange a welcome dinner. And he reflects on the fact that the Emperor will probably not take part, and he does not understand what to do. The brother turns to the lady and says that there is nothing he can do, and then apologizes for not being able to help her. Rose invites him not to say such words and informs him that she is the Empress, and therefore this is her duty. Rochester agrees with the lady and says that it is worth starting preparations for the reception. And leaving, he turns to the girl and tells her to take care of herself. With her brother gone, the Empress turns to the little lady and apologizes for having to listen to such a difficult conversation. One Mess Charlize claims that everything is fine and tells her not to worry. Rosa reports that everything will be difficult, and she understands no matter how hard she tries to do everything herself and conduct the reception on her own. Then the Emperor will not participate in the reception, and if she were in the place of the Margrave, she would have thought that this was a direct disregard. When the girl left Rosa's office, she thought that she didn't like watching her suffer. After all, she doesn't understand why the Empress should deal with the Emperor's mistakes, and she cannot judge this situation herself. Charlize is thinking about what she needs to ask Diamanda, because he probably knows at least something about the Antisovs. After all, one of this is the heroine associated with Diamond. The heiress of the Siena family, Antes, found Diamanda unconscious when he tried to escape from the imperial palace. Siena and Diamond fell in love with each other very quickly, but Diamond, who knew how to trust other people, could not understand his feelings at all. And in the end, the couple failed. However, the girl reflects that this is all nothing more than a strange story. And she understands that if Diamond and Siena's love blossoms again, then only in this life can he live happily. And she thinks that she should not be upset for no reason. Suddenly the prince turns to Charlie, and when she hears him, the girl is surprised and asks how long he has been here. The guy replies that from the moment she shook her head and asks what this big basket is. The main character replies that this is his lunch today, and it is all securely packed, and therefore he can eat in the evening. However, the guy does not understand why there is so much food here. Charlize explains that tomorrow evening a gala dinner will be given at the Imperial Palace in honor of the arrival of Margrave Anthes, and it is unlikely that she will be able to visit him. The prince heard this and asked what the Margrave was doing in the palace. And at this time the girl thought that it was great, because everything was going quite naturally. Diamond says the problem is serious, and he asks the girl if she can lean over and then whispers in her ear. Hearing this girl asks how long ago His Highness became so smart. The prince claims that he has been like this since birth, and then he says that she sometimes treats him just like a child, and therefore suggests that she should not forget that he is 3 years older than her. And then he offers to convey what he told her to the Empress and the Duke of Rochester. The main character claims that everything will be done, and then he says that she wanted to ask him something. The girl explains that the whole point of this technique is to show tribute to the auntie's family, and even if His Majesty does not participate, members of the imperial family can attend the celebration. The prince heard this and asks if she is talking about her grandmother, and the girl agrees with him and says that the emperor's mother has not appeared at such events for 5 years, and then asks why doesn't she turn into the light, and she says that this, of course, is just her idea. At this time, the main character reflects that Diamond, if you think about it this way, then his whole life is more like imprisonment than isolation. This is what gnaws at him. And all this, and only because he tried to protect himself. The emperor turns to his mother, says that she is most opposed to his becoming emperor, and he does not understand how she can do this to him. Maud reveals that he thinks he no longer needs her approval. And he talks about how he'll live like she's dead. And that's because she cares more about her grandchildren than her children. After receiving such a threat from the emperor, the Empress Dowager lives to this day like a ghost for her son and grandson. And the girl says now could be the perfect time for her natural comeback. And relatively speaking, this will happen because His Majesty ignores matters of national importance. And even if the emperor took part in the celebration, his mother's place would remain empty. The main character claims that you can call her for the sake of the presence of His Majesty. And, at this time, I thought that in fact the real goal is not to upset little sister Rose. Diamond says that if this happens, then in honor of the Antisov will be preserved, and the grandmother will be able to calmly return to the world. And then he asks the little lady if she told Her Majesty about this. Charlize replies that she hasn't told yet, but she was going to tell him first, and then the Empress. However, she does not understand why he looks at her like that and asks about it. The prince replies that sometimes it seems to him that she is not 5 years old but 500. And at that time, the girl thought that maybe she had acted too maturely by coming up with a solution. And she thinks that she needs to be more careful in future. Diamond reports that in any case this is a very good idea, and therefore he thinks that he can propose it to Her Majesty. Charlize looked at the prince and thought that he was smiling brightly, and she assumed that someday, very soon, the real main character would appear, who would shine with that smile. The next day, the man screams and asks how they could even do this to them, and he claims that there is peace in the empire because they are stopping all the monsters from the north. The aristocrat claims that more than half the seats are empty and asks if that makes sense. Mr. Antes reports that the Rochesters honored them with their presence, and they probably have some kind of proposal. And at that time he thought that, judging by the fact that the place of honor was empty, the emperor was unlikely to appear. And he understands that if a clear decision is not reached today, then. But suddenly he saw the surprised aristocrats and asked what happened, and then he saw the emperor's mother. When the woman entered the office, she said that she was glad to see everyone. The Empress says that they are endlessly grateful to her for considering them with her presence. And at this time, the guests thought that 2 empresses in one room was clearly an interesting thing. The Emperor's mother thanks her for being invited and says that she is not at all sure that she will be able to attend such an important meeting. At this time, Rose assures her that there is no need, because it is a great honor for them to have her among the parties to the discussion. At this time, Mr. Antes thought that this was an important meeting, which means she respects them enough to get out of such a long imprisonment. And then he says that he is grateful to both empresses for the care provided to the Antisov company. The gentleman says that they did not come such a long way so that everyone would limit themselves to only this. And he reports that at the moment, their army does not even have enough supplies. The Margrave, crying out, asks how they can compensate for the lack of supplies by cutting taxes, and he does not understand what this even means. And then he says that anyone who has ever been in his shoes understands perfectly well that he cannot calm down. Auntie says that maybe His Majesty is still offended by that incident 5 years ago, and he screams that this is wrong, and reports that the Crown Prince is all right, and he does not understand why the Marquis of Maud occupies the throne. Sir Rochester says that the prince is still too young, and he has only one answer to everything he says: nothing can be done. Antes argues that in this case the crown prince should ascend to the throne through a regency. The emperor says that he is extremely interested in why he is so excited about the matter, because the decision regarding which has already been made. And then the servants present their swords to Antaeus' neck, and he says that they will see each other tomorrow. But when he got tired from the table, he said that everyone else was cowards, and it was hard for him to defeat the demon. The gentleman reports that the reason why His Majesty refused an audience with Margrave Antaeus is that he asked for financial support, and then asks if it would not be better to take over the leadership that belongs to His Majesty the Emperor. The aristocrat proposes to begin by drawing up an official appeal for payment to the Lords, the social organization of the Emergency Relief Fund. The Margrave reports that in order to receive emergency funds, there must be a unanimous decision. The Count says he doesn't think the decision will be made unanimously, and he does not understand for what purpose he is saying all this. Antaeus says that asking the House of Lords for emergency funds does not imply that the situation itself is extremely difficult, and if so, then it will naturally attract public attention. The postman claims that if the people find out about this situation, then a similar article will probably appear stating that His Majesty the Emperor refused a request for help from the Antaeus family, and the press will write that the Antaeus clan is in an extremely difficult situation. The aristocrat argues that at the moment, it is only a matter of time before the monsters of the north invade, and eventually the damage will be done to the people of the empire. The servant tells the emperor that they have a big problem. Hearing this, he claims that he told him not to disturb him while he was working. However, the man says that the matter is very important, since the press writes about the same thing, and therefore he has no other choice. The emperor, who was spending time with his mistress at the time, asks the man if he came here because of a newspaper article. But when I read it, I screamed and asked what kind of nonsense it was. The assistant reports that at the moment, the mood of society is extremely shaky, and the majority thinks that demons can break into the country even tomorrow. And besides, mentions of the previous emperor and the imprisoned Diamand. There is also talk that he abandoned the people for his own affairs. The emperor drank a glass of wine and then ordered Margrave Antaeus to be called to him right away. The Margrave turns to Rochester and reports that he can only admire his amazing insight, and all he can think about is how well everything was invented. However, the gentleman replies that in truth he is not the author of this idea, the Crown Prince. Hearing this, the Margrave was surprised and said that he was in prison. The Empress reports that at the moment, His Highness the Wall Prince is under her protectorate, and His Majesty allowed her to take care of the Crown Prince, and thanks to this, she was able to get advice from him on this matter. Rochester reports that the relationship between the Emperor and the Crown Prince is not so good, and therefore it was natural to think that they were no better with the Empress either. The Emperor's mother says that she thinks their relationship can be called normal. Antaeus asks Her Majesty if it is possible to start the reception in this case, and she agrees. Rose says that as soon as the celebration began, the weather improved. Grandmother Diamanda turns to the Empress and says that she wanted to thank her in advance, and therefore now, without haste, she thinks it's an extremely opportune moment. The Emperor's mother reports that she said that she was now taking care of Diamanda, and they say he even has a personal maid of honor. Apparently, she was too late with her thanks. The grandmother says that she was afraid that she would hurt her grandson, and over the past few years, she could not help him. And then she takes the Empress by the hands and says that she is very grateful to her for caring so much about him. Rose says that, being the Empress of their empire, and at the same time an adult, it is her responsibility to take care of the young Crown Prince. And then she says that she is simply taking her place, the Empress, because of a difficult situation. At this time, the maid turns to Her Majesty and reports that they have to go. Rochester tells his sister that Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's presence at this dinner was an extremely wise decision, and if she had not come to this celebration, then Margrave Antaeus would have left the palace before they told him the idea of a crown prince. The brother claims that he knows how great the pride of the old lords is. Rose remembers that Cutie Charlie asked her about this. After all, she was interested in the fact that the Empress Dowager had the same power as His Majesty the Emperor. And if so, can she, instead of the Emperor, hold a dinner in honor of Margrave Antaeus? The Empress told her brother about this conversation. Hearing this, he doesn't understand how a child could ask such a question without a second thought. Hearing this, the Empress does not understand how he can say such a thing and claims that Charlie helped them all. From this, Rochester agrees and says, "If you judge it this way, then it's true." The Empress asks her brother if he just said that she was right. However, he does not understand why she is so surprised, and then asks who she even takes him for. A few minutes later, Charlize approaches them and tells the Empress that she has brought her an umbrella. The maid says that she will carry it, but the Empress objects and says that she can handle it herself because she wants to share a place under Charlie's umbrella and therefore suggests that she not worry about it. And at that time, Rochester thought that even if it was the Crown Prince's idea, but without this girl, the plan would not have been carried out. And he remembers his sister's words that she said there are benefits from the girl. Rochester thought that she loved her because the girl was still small, but apparently this was not the case. And that's why it's hard for him to draw conclusions yet. And so all that remains is to observe. After lunch, the main character ran to Demond and gave him a newspaper for him to look at. The prince read that His Majesty the Emperor promised to support the auntie's family to the fullest, and then asks if it's true. Charlie says that there are a lot of articles in other newspapers about the Emperor refusing to protect the people of the Empire, and then asks, which is just amazing, isn't it? The prince replies that he is surprised. The maid turns to the main character and reports that she did well in the morning, and therefore lunch will be given to the palace before the Dowager Empress. This time, the main character thought that she would try to restore the relationship at a dinner party, and this is a good strategy for her. A little later, the Empress, along with her maid and Charlize, arrived at the palace of the Dowager Empress. Seeing this castle, the main character thought that she didn't care about it at all, because there was a lot of junk in the castle. The girl thought that if she had a family, she would love each member with all her might, and she does not understand how one can practically destroy a family because of power. Diamond's grandmother meets and then greets. The Empress thanks her for the invitation. The woman looked at the girl and said that she was Charlize. Hearing this, the girl does not understand how Her Majesty knows about her. The main character greets Her Majesty and informs her that she is the maid of honor of Her Imperial Majesty Charlize. The Empress reports that she has prepared a small lunch for their suburb and therefore invites them to pass. And then she says that she is glad that they had the opportunity to have lunch with Her Highness the Empress. Rose says that honestly she should visit her more often. She really wanted to do this, but she was so afraid of causing her inconvenience that she didn't dare. And he says that she is, after all, His Majesty's wife. The Emperor's mother says that no noble woman can escape an arranged marriage, and she is a victim of circumstances, and therefore suggests not to blame herself. And she says that besides, she is indebted to her and thanks her for taking care of her grandson. And I'm also grateful to Rose for deciding to contact her. The young Empress thanks the lady for her kind words. Her Majesty asks the girl if it tastes good. Charlize replies that it is very tasty and thanks her for her concern. Suddenly, the main character notices that Her Majesty seems to only eat soft food and wonders if it could be because of a dental problem. The Emperor's mother reports that she kept begging the Empress to bring the girl, and then asks her if she cares about Diamanda. Her Majesty thanks the girl for this and says that she is also just a baby. Hearing this, the girl assures her that these are just her duties. Diamanda's grandmother says that she heard that his grandson recently had a bout of fever, and then asks if he's okay now. Charlize replies that he is fine and has recovered very quickly. He also eats well, and lately he has been really enjoying southern meat dishes. Her Majesty says that she heard that the girls are only 5 years old, but she already speaks so well. The Empress says that her Charlie is so smart and she is a very capable worker. Her Majesty wonders if it will be possible to send children to her palace from time to time, and then she sadly says that it's always empty here, and she would like to talk to someone at least sometimes. The Empress announces that she will order that Charlie be sent to her from time to time. Hearing this, the woman thanked her. After lunch, when they returned home, Hayden asks the girl what happened during lunch, and she replies that it's nothing special. However, the maid does not understand why the Empress is acting so strangely and asks the girl about it. Rosa turns to the girl, hugs her and says that she has become so popular with them, and that's why she's a little sad about it. And then he says that he wants to keep her only for himself. The Empress explains that first the Crown Prince, now the Empress Dowager, and they all want her. And she claims that she must build good relationships with many people, and this will greatly help her in the future. Rose asks the girl if she loves her more than anyone. The girl replies that she loves her very much, and at this time she thought that the Empress has nothing to worry about because she has no one besides her. The maid informs Her Majesty that it is time for her to attend a meeting, And when the Empress went to the meeting, the girl immediately ran to Diamond. The surprised prince asks if she really saw her grandmother. And then the girl says that it seems to her that from now on she will periodically visit Her Highness in her castle. The prince asks if his grandmother is okay, and the girl replies that she looks very healthy. And I wonder if she eats well. Charles says the food is delicious as always, so she eats with gusto. And at that time I thought that probably it's not worth talking about soups, and she reflects on the fact that even though it is not immediately clear that he is her grandson, they are worried in exactly the same way. The main character turns to His Majesty and asks if he remembers his grandmother. The guy replies that his last memories are from the age of 3, and so they are not very clear. And then he says that she was a very kind person. Diamond remembers that when his mother went to the next world, she was the only one who hugged him while the others were afraid of His Majesty. The grandmother was the only one who stood up for him. The prince turns to the girl and says that among the aristocrats, Antes was the only one who opposed His Majesty's accession to the throne. And he understands that that's why Grandma wanted to help at least somehow, and it's good that everything was resolved this way. Diamond assert that his grandmother and Margrave Antes are people to whom he is very grateful, and especially to his grandmother, because she suffered the most because of him. And at this time the girl thought that these rumors were true, and it was true that the Emperor had threatened Her Highness with a knife. And the girl understands that she must take care of Her Highness as best as possible. Charlize says that thanks to the fact that she saved his life, they were able to get to know him, and this means that she is very grateful to her. And then the girl asks His Majesty if he liked her words. However, the prince does not understand what she is talking Sprashavad about. The girl states that he blushed and then smiled. Diamond asks the little lady if she is too self-confident. Charlize looked at the prince and thought that he was red, like a lobster. And then he remembers that compared to their first meeting, he became much happier. The main character reflects that the reason the original Diamond was unhappy was because he was not Sienna. And so she will later introduce him to Sienna and leave everything as it is, because she understands that it will be right. The next day, when Charlize arrived at Her Highness's palace, the maids did not understand what kind of child was in the Empress Dowager's palace. And then they remembered that this was the same maid of honor from Her Majesty's palace. The maid says that this girl is younger than her and senior in rank, and he understands that it will be hilarious if he starts giving her orders. At this time, the main character thought that the meaning was still the same as before, and if there is a difference between these maids and the previous ones, it is that these have a backstory. Charlize reflects that she would really like to help Her Highness the Empress Dowager, and for this, she must set a stage and start with drama. Suddenly, the girl begins to cry, and the handmaids do not understand why she is crying, and then they think about how they need to quickly calm her down. The head maid asks the lady-in-waiting why she is crying. The girl turns to her and says that it seems to her that the other ladies-in-waiting hate her. Charlize reports that the maid said that they would not allow a minor maid of honor to command them, and called her the same maid of honor from the Empress's palace. Hearing this, the maid asks when they said that, and then screaming, they say that this is all a lie, and this is an unfair accusation. After all, they don't understand how they could even say such a thing to a maid of honor from the Empress's palace. At this time, the main character thought that they weren't trying to hide the truth now, but she wouldn't create such a drama if she was going to leave here. Charlize tells the lady that she is fine and asks her not to tell Her Majesty about what happened today, and explains that she is worried that Her Majesty and the Empress Dowager will hurt each other's feelings with this, since she is Her Majesty's maid of honor. Although the Empress Dowager's palace has full-time maids, it looks as if it has been empty for hundreds of years. The main character reflects that when she saw that the other maids were treating her poorly because she worked in the Empress Dowager's palace, she immediately realized that they were all pawns of the Emperor, since he only sends his people to her palace. The girl understands that a change of personnel must have an extremely compelling reason. However, it doesn't matter whether her words are true or not. But in any case, if they have a reason, then everything can be done. And besides, insulting the maid of honor can be equated to insulting her mistress, and she understands that this is a more serious matter. Charlize reflects on the fact that if the lady is on Her Highness's side, then perhaps everything will work out for her. After listening to the girl, the head maid, screaming, asks the maids if they are in their right mind, and she wonders if they will take responsibility for Her Highness's anger. And the chief maid of honor claims no matter how small she was, she independently rose to the title of maid at that age. And then she says that if the empress finds out about this, it could result in a quarrel between her and the ruling empress. And she tells them that she won't let them get away with it. But suddenly the Empress Dowager comes to them and tells the main lady in waiting not to worry. And then he says that he will do everything possible to maintain a trusting relationship with Her Majesty. At this time, the main character thought that she had always been so calm, and therefore did not even know that she could get angry, and that when she was angry, the Empress Dowager was really scary. The maids turn to Her Highness and ask her to forgive them, and then say that they in no way tried to harm Her Highness. The Empress turns to them and says that they are maids of her palace, and then asks if they want to say that they did not know that they could offend her. At this time, the main character thought that everything was probably dark before their eyes. After all, they are here to keep an eye on Her Highness, and if they lose this position, they will be fired immediately. Charlize wonders if she can add more fuel to the fire. The girl turns to Her Highness the Dowager Empress and reports that she is afraid that the maids will beat her again. At this time, Her Majesty asks the maids why they still have an arrogant look. And then, screaming, he claims that they have not yet drawn any conclusions. The lady turns to the child and tells her not to worry, because today they have no place in her palace. She says that from now on, the maids will work in the underground prison of the main palace for at least 1 year without pay. Hearing this, the main character thought that sending them to an underground prison was a very appropriate punishment. Her Majesty turns to the maids and says that their behavior will be monitored there, and if they, in the end, do not repent of their sins, they will be deprived of their positions as maids at court. The maids heard this and beg Her Highness to forgive them too, and say that this was the last time. However, the lady claims that she does not want to hear them anymore, and so she tells the senior maid that she knows what to do next. At this time, Charlize thought that she had no idea that everything would end like this. However, she understands that these maids were no match for Her Highness, and everything is good that happened this way. Her Highness turns to the girl and apologizes for what happened, and she explains that she didn't even think that they could do this to her. Charlize replies that everything is fine and then thanks the lady and says that from now on she will not see them again. Her Highness turns to the girl and says that thanks to her, she got the opportunity to get rid of these arrogant maids. And despite all the chaos that just happened, she has a reason why she called her, and then tells her that they need to bake a cake. The Dowager Empress reports that she does not know what to do at all because she has never baked cakes. And she says that although the head maid knows a lot, she said the same thing, that she doesn't know how to cook a cake. Surprised, Charlize asks if she wants to bake the cake herself. Her Majesty replies that she wishes to give it along with the gift to Her Majesty Diamond, and he reports that the Empress gave them permission. At this time, the main character thought that there was some reason for the gift. Grandma says that Daimond's birthday is tomorrow. The Empress Dowager explains that for 5 years, she could do nothing but do anything for him, and so she finally had the opportunity. The girl says that she will do everything possible to make this cake the most delicious in the entire empire. The little lady quickly rolled up her sleeves and began to cook, and after a few minutes, they had a cake. And Grandma says what she thinks. All that remains is to decorate. The girl believes that fruit and chocolate decorations will be just right. At this time, the main character thought that the Empress Dowager wanted to personally prepare the cake, and she realized that she loved Diamond very much. When their cake was ready, Charlize said that it looked amazing and His Highness would be very happy. The girl reports that, to tell the truth, she did not know that His Highness's birthday is tomorrow. Hearing this, the Empress asks why he didn't tell her about it. However, the main character says that she doesn't understand why he didn't tell her, because she is his personal maid of honor. And the Empress says that perhaps he did not want to bother her with this. After all, she assumes that he probably likes the girl, because having such a devoted maid of honor nearby cannot but please him. At this time, the girl thought that this is loyalty, and she only wishes him and Sienna happiness. And then she thought that she should stop, and at this time, focus on talking with Her Highness, and therefore, she needed to change the topic. Charlize asks Her Highness what kind of daughter Margrave Anthes is. The lady replies that she saw her once when she was just a baby, and her name is Sienna. The Countess and Diamond are about the same age and they met once, And, unlike the sullen Margrave, she turned out to be a sweetheart. Her Majesty recalls that she was still a strong woman for her age and pulled out a piece of Daiman's hair. And after that, they calmed the boy down for a long time. She also remembers that there was a conversation about the children's engagement. Hearing this, the girl remembers that in the original there seemed to be no talk of engagement. Her Majesty says it was more of a joke, and then asks Charlize why she is asking about the Countess. The girl explains that the Margrave came to the palace, and that's why she became interested. At this time, Her Majesty is worried whether she can really send this cake to Diamond. And she says that now that she is trying to behave like a worthy grandmother, she is afraid that she might hurt him. However, Charlize assures her that this is not true, and says that the Crown Prince loves her very much and misses her very much. Hearing this, Her Majesty was very happy, and the main character understands that the most important thing for the grandmother is the happiness of her grandson. Suddenly, a maid comes into their room and reports that trouble has happened. The Empress asks the maid of honor who is barging in like that. The maid apologizes and explains that the fact is that she received a message from the imperial palace. The maid of honor reports that immediately after today's government meeting, His Majesty intends to pay a visit to her palace. When the main character heard this, she was surprised because she doesn't understand why he decided to do this so suddenly, and she can't believe that he knows the Empress Dowager's plight and decided to pay her a visit. Her Majesty says it's very much his style. However, the maid of honor does not understand and says how can he behave rudely towards his mother. The Empress says that although he is her son, he is not the kind of person who cares much about blood ties, because he thinks that since he placed her here, he has already fulfilled his duty towards his mother. Her Majesty thinks that this is a warning, since he is so cruel to his own mother, and she understands that she can do the same to others. At this time, the main character does not understand how he can use members of his family for political purposes. The Empress says that since he said to prepare for the visit, then she should do everything possible. And then he turns to the maid of honor and says that she has a hard time with such a mistress. However, the maid reports that everything is in order and she will do everything possible. The Empress thanks the baby, and at this time, Charlize thought that the reception should be perfect, and she understands that she cannot allow Her Highness to lose face. Charlize says that tea and sweets would be the best choice and asks if this is true. The maid of honor says that something can clearly be found in the warehouse and says that she will go and look at that warehouse. When the girl was looking for dishes, she thought that there was a lot of dust here, and she didn't understand how the room could be abandoned like that, and so she would tear off the emperor's head. The maid asks how the girl is doing. She replies that all the dishes are broken and asks what they should do. Suddenly, at this time, the main character saw Her Highness and greeted Her Majesty. Then she asked the lady what brought her here. The Empress claims that she was just bored and looked at the girl and said that she was having fun here even without her, since she was all covered in dust and dirty. At this time, the main character thought that when the Empress worries about her, she is so beautiful and simply the best, and her soul and appearance are beautiful. The girl reflects on the fact that if she were a man, she would definitely challenge the emperor to a duel for Her Majesty. The maid of honor informs the Empress that if she has come to visit Her Highness, that is why she will see her off. However, the lady replies that she was hoping to meet Charlie. The Empress says that he heard His Majesty and intends to pay a visit, and the maid of honor says that rumors fly quickly. The Empress agrees and says that it's true, too quickly, since he even asked her to take part. Rose says that's why she arrived as quickly as possible and brought tea leaves, dishes, and sweets. At this time, Charlize saw the maid Weber, who was holding a box in her hands, and the girl offered to help her. However, the maid reports that everything is in order and she will carry it to the kitchen herself. The head maid asks Charlize if she can help the maids of this palace, and the girl agrees. The Empress tells the maids to tell the local maids prepare everything and bring the missing things. Weber says that everything would be fine, but she hasn't seen a single local maid in the morning, and she doesn't understand when they all left. The maid of honor reports that they were all fired. Hearing this, the Empress says that without local maids it will be difficult, and therefore it is probably worth sending several girls from her palace here. However, the maid of honor says that this is not worth doing, and to be honest, the help that has already arrived is more than enough. The Empress insists that she will send her maids, if only because he doesn't want to look like Charlie is straining himself. And then he says that some help is better than no help. Rose turns to the girl and informs her that she will go and invites her to help the senior maids. At this time, the main character thought that the Empress had honored them with her help, and therefore they needed to get it done quickly. However, she understands that this is practically impossible. The girl reflects on the fact that the tea and sweets may be ready, but the reception area itself is not a drop away. And she understands no matter how hard they work, they simply cannot hide everything from the problem. The maid of honor reports that the place is clearly not in the best condition for receiving the emperor. And then the head maid asks her how she feels about having the tea party outside. The maid says that all the important people will arrive here straight from the meeting, and therefore, in order to cheer them up, the reception could be held on the street. Hearing this, the maid of honor says that she doesn't even know, but understands that if this is so, then many problems remain. After all, the most important thing is yet to come.